All right, I think we are back live now. Hopefully it works better this time. Sorry for the interruption. Hopefully it's all good now. So I wanted to give it a minute to try and reset itself. And I see we already have a super chat. So Luke O, thank you so much for the first super chat of the live stream here. He says, I drive my semi through Pittsburgh every Monday on my way to Ohio. And the other day I saw a dark green Mustang on I-76 near Monroeville. Could have that been you? I couldn't tell if it was a Bullet. On your way to Ohio on the is it on the turnpike? Yeah, I-76 near Monroeville. Probably wouldn't have been me. I haven't driven the Bullet since like last weekend. So hasn't been, I think it's been a while, but anyway, let me know if you guys can hear me, but thank you so much, Luke, for the super chat. But yeah, probably wasn't me. All right. Someone's saying thumbs down. So still is having an issue. This is weird. I don't know. My internet seems to be okay. I have no clue what's going on. This is a bummer. Maybe I'll have to go onto my phone or something. Justin says he can hear me, so that's good. Let me see. This is so weird. I don't know why it would be cutting out. Okay, people say it's working for them. I'm just going to push through. Whoever can hear me, and see me. Whoever can't, I apologize. I don't know. Maybe YouTube will get themselves figured out here. Or my internet will get itself worked out. Whatever's going on. But it seems like, okay, everyone's saying it's good. So sorry. Let's just continue. I don't know what was going on. All right. So someone says they can comment on their iPhone and watch on their PS4. There you go. You got it all covered. Justin says, how's the NSX so far? Yes. So any of you who follow me on Instagram will know that I just posted today about the NSX that I had over the past weekend. And it was so sweet. I mean, it was the most expensive and the fastest press car I've ever had. So, you know, it had an advantage already, but whew, that thing was amazing. It was so much fun. And that was my first time actually driving an NSX. I'd never driven one before in my life. I've heard so many good things about them. I've, seen all the reviews already, but man, it is really, I think, way more impressive in every way. Like, I think, even the exterior of it. Like, I think if you haven't seen one actually in person, you can't fully appreciate just how three-dimensional the design is and how cool it looks up close and in person. The interior also, is so much nicer than a lot of people give it credit for. Everything's covered in leather or metal for the most part. It's really nice feeling. And yes, the infotainment's out of a Civic, but it's actually easier to use than like McLaren's weird infotainment system and stuff like that. And so for me, I thought like the NSX was amazing. Having the blow-off valves going off behind you is super cool. All that kind of stuff. And then everyone loves it because, everyone's always, I guess people see Lamborghinis and things like that. And, they're cool. And some people are still really impressed by that. But there's also, some, I guess, preconceptions with a lot of people that own some of those types of supercars. And I feel like the NSX, you don't really have that as much. And so I think, there's less of a stigmatism around that. It's more just a positive mentality with the NSX than you get with some of the other supercars. I could be totally off there, but that's just how it felt to me. I didn't have anyone who didn't like it whenever they saw it. Everyone that saw it in traffic was giving me thumbs up. They thought it was super cool, all that kind of stuff. And yeah, it was just a ton of fun. It's so fast. It's so good with its handling and stuff. You guys will see the reactions and stuff. There's multiple accelerations in the review here that'll be coming out next week. Oh, it was impressive. I missed that car. There are a few press cars, that I really am sad to see them drive away. And that was one of them, man. It was so much fun. All right. So we have a few other questions here. Someone asked if it's the updated version of the NSX. It is. So 2019, they retuned the suspension and stuff. So it was that newer version. And then it was the yellow color, which is new for this year as well. Zero is asking thoughts on 370Z Nismo versus Type R. I'd like a raw experience, but not totally uncomfortable. Well, obviously those two cars are going to drive totally differently because you have the front wheel drive turbo and the rear wheel drive naturally aspirated V6. So that's going to be, a very different driving experience between the two. It depends on, do you like tail happiness? Do you like that rear wheel drive driving dynamic, or do you like the front wheel drive grip and being able to power out of corners? Excuse me. And so that's kind of, going to be up to you to decide. Between the two, I personally like stuff that's a little bit newer safety stuff as far as crash structures and things go. And since the 370Z, is at this point, like 13 years old, 12, I don't know how great that is versus the Type R, which is new, very safe, and it's more roomy, more practical. So, I mean, that depends on your lifestyle and stuff. But if you ever have, friends you're carrying along or family or stuff you want to throw in the hatch, I think between the two, I'd personally go for the Type R. And it's still a very raw experience, and you can crank up that suspension to the Type R mode and really have it be very stiff with the spring rate and stuff. So yeah, that's kind of my thoughts there on the Type R, but I think it could still be very raw and very exciting. Matt D is asking if the Ford Fiesta ST is a good first car. I think it is. I think it's a great little car to learn, how to drive manual on. It's a great car to just drive in general. It's nice and small, so very easy to manage, all that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, I think it'd be a great first car. And they're really starting to get more affordable as well. Yeah, Yavinder Get is asking, do you like launch, or did you do launch control? I did do launch control on several occasions in the NSX. It's very easy to do in that car, and it's very fun. And actually, that's the best way to get the really intense feeling of the NSX acceleration, because my rolling acceleration wasn't quite as crazy. But whenever you launch, that's where it really gets pretty nuts. So yeah, it was amazing. Jonah's asking for thoughts on the new Land Rover Defender. They seem pretty cool. I've not driven one. I sat in one at the LA Auto Show, but that was about it. So, they seem to be pretty cool. I think the thing with the new Defender, though, is, it's never going to be as rugged as the old one. And that was the whole appeal of the old one. And so I think this new Defender will sell much better. And right now, Land Rover and Jaguar, they need wins. They need sales. They need just the company to do better. And so, they could have made the Defender some really rough, Humvee type thing or something, but I think they went in the right direction for the company, even though the purists will be upset about it. I think that it should do pretty well as kind of a more affordable G-Wagon type of thing. Maybe it could become a status symbol, something like that. But yeah, I have not driven one, but I've heard it's, kind of similar to the other Land Rovers and stuff like that. Luco, thank you so much for another super chat. He says, do you ever miss your Mustang EcoBoost or GT? I don't really miss the EcoBoost. I miss that time in my life when I drove that much. That car, I put, I think 27,000 miles on it in, I think what was about 2 years or so that I had it. I wish I drove that much these days. I just have so many press cars and not as many places to go. The GT, the only thing I miss on the GT is the 2016s, had those hood vent turn signals. That is one thing the Bullet does not have that I wish it did, because those are a lot of fun. But the hood vents on the 2019s, you can't even see the hood vents because the way they redesigned the hood. So it wouldn't make much sense to put them in on 2019. But that is one cool thing that I miss from the old GT. But otherwise, no, it's all just great with the Bullet. Dom, thank you so much for the super chat. He says, have you talked about Honda getting rid of the manuals, and do you review fan cars? I have a 2018 Accord 2.0 Sport. I don't think you have reviewed that specific car. Well, thank you so much again for the super chat. I did mention about the manuals getting killed off in a weekly update, I think about 2 weeks ago. But I would love to review your car. I do review, fan cars. I used to do it all the time. These days, especially this year, I've not done any this year just because of COVID. And I'm probably not going to do any privately owned vehicles until next year, unless things improve significantly here in the next few months. But otherwise, I know too many at-risk people that I'm playing it very safe with COVID. So unfortunately, that means I haven't gone to any car shows or anything. Like, I guess Ford or Mustang Nationals or Ford Nationals was this past weekend. People were asking if I was there. I did not go to that. I have not gone to any car shows this year. I've not done any kind of interactions like that, sadly. And so It's a bummer, but please send me an email, Dom. All the contact info is in the description below. If you want to send me an email, definitely next year, I would love to review your car. Or like I said, maybe sometime this fall if things really do improve. And if you're relatively close to the Pittsburgh area, I will drive several hours to review cars. But yeah, please send me an email. I would love to review that because I have done the Acura 2.0 T Touring, but I haven't done the Sport with a manual. And I've been really itching to drive one of those. And I'll never get one as a press car now because they've officially killed them off. So I would love to review yours. And thank you so much for offering it. Bennington 249, thank you so much for the super chat. He says, hey, I've heard you mention several times that you want to buy a convertible someday. Do you have a list of contenders / models you're considering? Absolutely. So my top pick is a Jaguar F-Type. I used one. That is one of the sweetest sounding cars. And if you go back and watch my reviews on any of the F-Types, primarily, honestly, the base one, the base F-Type V6 convertible that a fan actually lent me for the entire day. I reviewed that, and that was so much fun. And I'd be totally happy with even a base F-Type. I mean, yeah, the V8 ones would be great, but that supercharged V6, even in the base one, sounds so good. That is my top pick for what I would want for a convertible. Other contenders, because it'll probably be at least a year or two before I probably get it. I'm also considering potentially if they do a convertible version of the Nissan 400Z or of the Subaru BRZ or Toyota 86 for the next gen version next year. If either of those come with convertible, I would strongly consider one of those because I know it'd make for great content as well as being something I'd be very curious to, experience. So those are contenders. Also, the 2019 Miata is my all-time favorite little sports car under $30,000. And that is another very strong contender, especially since for me, a convertible would just be a weekend car. And so I don't need something very practical. And so I think a Miata would suit that very well. But I know that Beth has said that she would like to be able to drive whatever convertible I get as well. So the Miata's manual only. I could teach her. The automatic in the Miata just isn't great and kind of kills some of the fun. So if I got a Miata, I'd want to get a manual. So I'd have to teach her how to drive manual. But I think she'd prefer an automatic. So I think that's why the F-Type is still the top contender, but like I said, some of the others could potentially win out. And the ultimate dream would be if you guys saw the LC 500 convertible review. If I'm ever fortunate enough to have the money to buy one of those someday, I would buy one of those in a heartbeat. I love that thing, and that would be so much fun to have as my convertible as well. Noel says Miata in the rain isn't fun. I don't think I've driven a Miata in the rain. I did when I had the 2019 Miata. That was like one of the weeks in the fall where we got snow. And I did actually drive it on the summer tires in a little bit of snow. That was a little hairy, but I got through it and I just took it slow, but I did manage to do it. It does have pretty good traction control and stuff. And that's such a small vehicle with little skinny tires. It is pretty easy to control, but yeah, they can be a little bit iffy if you don't have the right tires on them, I think. Kevin says, good evening, Matt. Huge fan since 2013. Thank you so much for the long-time support. I've been seeing a lot of you have been commenting recently about, watching since the BRZ days and stuff like that. And I really appreciate all of you who've stuck with me here for the past 7 years. Hopefully you guys continue to enjoy all the videos I've been doing over all these years. It's been a lot of fun. Matt D asks, you've probably been asked this before, but why did you change your name from Superdruck's fan to Matt Moran Motoring? It was mostly just the Subaru name was really holding me back. Subaru didn't even want to send me press vehicles for some reason, so I wasn't getting any benefits from them by sticking with the Subaru name. And many other PR reps at car companies told me, we'd love to, send you press cars. We'd love to invite you on press trips or whatever, but we can't have someone reviewing our cars with Subaru in their name. It just implies bias. I'm literally saying I am a Subaru WRX fan. So, why would anyone invite me to review anything other than a WRX? Because what if I'm not a fan of it? I'm only a fan of WRXs. So it was very, just misleading, I guess, for a lot of people. And it also just got to a point in the past few years where it just wasn't really true. I mean, I like the WRX, but there's so many exciting and interesting vehicles in that price point. I don't think a WRX would be my pick if I were looking for something in that price range currently. So that's kind of, I guess, why I also did a whole video whenever I did the name change where I kind of go into that a little bit more in depth, but that's kind of the cliff notes as to why I changed it. And Matt Moran Motoring, Matt Moran's just Moran's a shortened version of my last name. And I thought it kind of rolled off the tongue nicely with the motoring. And so that's why I chose that name. Noel, thank you so much for the super chat. He says, will I be disappointed if I sell my 05 NB that I want to supercharge for a Project BRZ 86 to supercharge? I guess it depends. Well, first, obviously, if you're going to miss the convertible component, because that's a very big component of the Miata, if you're going to miss that, that would be one thing that'd be disappointing. Otherwise, and it is a little bit lighter. Obviously, the NPs especially are much lighter. So there's that component as well. I would suggest if you watched my supercharged BRZ review or my Innovate supercharged FRS review, that'll kind of give you a little bit of an idea of what it's like to drive one of those. And if that sounds good to you, go for it. But if you're really, if you love your car, if you love your NB Miata, bleh, and you want to stick with that, I really think that you form a bond with the car, and that's something I'm very loyal to. And so if you love your Miata and you're happy with it, and you think a supercharger would fix any complaints you have with it, stick with it. Put the supercharger on it and continue on with the proven good car that you have. That might be something to stick with. But I know the BRZ and stuff has newer tech and a little bit more room, a little more practical. So if those things are more appealing, then definitely go for it. Supercharged BRZ I think is a great way to address the lack of power in those. And if I had kept mine, I'd probably would have supercharged it as well, because the turbocharging can be a little it's a little peaky and not as smooth. The supercharger really just makes it feel like you got a 6-cylinder under the hood instead of a 4. And it's really, really smooth with the way the power is with the superchargers that at least I used. All right. So let's see. Someone else says hello. The best part of the Superdruck's fan name was how fast you said it. Yep, and I still got it. I still can spit it out there without any issues. Glad TV's asking if the BRZ is reliable. From what I've seen, they have been. Mine, over the 33,000 miles that I drove mine, never had any issues. It did make the crickets noise that's famous with those. Whenever you're idling and stuff, but honestly, I just got used to it. It was kind of a funny quirk of the car. The only other thing was the taillights kept filling up with water, and so they would turn into fish tanks pretty quickly. And I had to keep getting the taillights replaced multiple times. But other than that, it was totally fine. I have seen some people on the forums are saying that, once you're over 100,000 miles, they can get a little iffy. I think one of the bearings goes or something around 90,000 miles sometimes. That's very foggy information, though. You definitely want to go check out, a BRZ forum or Facebook group or something like that to get more details on how they are in the long term. But it was great whenever I had mine. Scoop's asking if I'll ever do a review of a BMW M8 competition. I would love to. If BMW starts sending me press cars, that would be great. Angel, thank you so much for the super chat. He says, hey, Matt, missing your anniversary trips to Disney. It was cool to run into you and your wife a few years back. Oh, awesome. Yeah, so we met. That was actually our first anniversary in 2016. Went to Disney, and that was so cool to be able to see you guys there. I still remember that. That was great. Thanks for continuing to watch the channel and stuff, by the way. Yeah, it would be nice to go back to Disney. We were talking about wanting to go to Disney potentially this year, and then everything happened and that went out the window. But hoping maybe next year to go back again, because it's always a good time. And now one of our relatives actually lives in California, and so we're thinking about maybe visiting her and maybe doing a trip to Disneyland along with that or something. She's actually never been to Disneyland, so we'll have to maybe do that. Maybe we'll run into you again. We'll have to see. But yeah, thank you so much again for the super chat. Sean G says, when is the T50 review coming? Man, yeah, that's the Gordon Murray car that just had all the details on it revealed this week. I'll be talking about that in the weekly update as well, and be swooning all over it in that weekly update. It is so sweet. That's the car that's worth buying the lottery ticket for, and just hoping that one day you can, it's $3 million or whatever for those things. But it's so glorious. It's got like a 12,100 RPM red line, 6-speed manual, naturally aspirated V12, center driving position, the fans in the back to adjust the aerodynamics. The whole car is just it's a modern McLaren F1 essentially, because Gordon Murray's the guy who did the F1. It's like the most amazing car. And I mean, I kind of roll my eyes at a lot of hypercars these days, because there's always these we're only making 10 of these limited edition Lamborghinis. And I just yawn at that kind of stuff. But this thing actually seems really, really cool. And man, yeah. Just got to keep buying those lottery tickets. That's the only way I'll ever be able to get to afford one of those things. But it'd be sweet. I'd love to review one. If any of the 100 people that are getting one of those has one and they'd like to offer it to me for a review, please send me an email. That would make my year. So that would be amazing. All right. Yeah, 12,000 RPMs. It is really crazy. The whole thing in that car is just bonkers. It has a roof scoop, by the way, that can like let in induction sound, so you can get more sound from the air, I guess, as it's being sucked into the engine. That car just seems like it's going to be epic. I cannot wait for the Carfection review and all those guys that get to review that kind of stuff. It's going to be amazing. Newt Media is here to help moderate. Thanks so much, Zach. He did what I didn't do. See, I was going to get a WRX, and then I ended up getting my Legacy GT Spec B because ended up being the same price as a WRX. But Newt actually bought himself a WRX, and he's been loving it. You can go check him out on Instagram if you want to see it. He does great photography work. He's done a photo shoot with the Bullet already and stuff, and it's great to see you on here, and thanks for joining. All right, best affordable fun car MX-5 ND says get rid of the Mustang and get a C8. The C8 is sweet, but I love that Bullet and I'm keeping that thing forever. And yeah, as far as convertibles go, that was another contender because I really liked it. And maybe the Z06 version with its flat plane crank that it's supposedly going to have could be pretty sweet, but that's kind of out of my price range for what I'd want for a weekend car. I can get a really nice F-Type for way less than a C8, and to me, I'd have probably just as much fun, if not even more fun with the F-Type than I would with the C8, honestly. Just me personally, because I love the supercharger sound of the F-Type, and the way that V6 sounds is so sweet. Prabhu's asking a 400Z or a new WRX STI. What is your take? Well, both cars are kind of really mysteries still at this point. So I'm not sure, which one's going to end up being better. If the 400Z rumors are right, and it's basically the Infiniti Q60 motor with a manual on a refreshed 370Z platform, I would probably hope that the WRX STI is a little bit better and a little bit actually fully next gen, totally new from the ground up. But they might have a lot of carryover stuff in that too, because Subaru loves kind of saving money sometimes. So I'm not sure which one's going to be better. It's going to be a while. I think honestly, from what I've seen, 400Z should be coming, sometime next year, actually in dealers. Versus the WRX STI, the latest that I've heard is that the regular WRX is going to debut fall of 2021, and the all-new STI won't come till the fall of 2022. So we're talking about over 2 years away for the new WRX STI still, if that's true. So if time is something you're not good at, being patient, waiting for stuff, like I'm terrible with that, I would just, go for the Z400 or whatever, and then a year and a half or 2 years later, whenever you can finally get an STI, get one of those. Might be a little bit better. But all right. So yeah, other questions here. We have someone asking GT86 or Lexus RC200T. The Lexus is like way heavier and way bulkier, way less sporty. The GT86 is the one you should buy if you want a sports car. The Lexus would be the one you're going to want to buy if you want a nice cruiser Grand Tourer that looks really good. That would be my take on those two. Stinky says, don't you think that the Bullet is kind of a gimmick? I know plenty of people think it's a gimmick, Matt Farah included, and I really respect a lot of his opinions. Personally, I don't think it's a gimmick. I mean, yes, you have the whole movie tie-in thing, and so the paint color and the appearance of it might be a gimmick to some people, but I think the improvements are good. You get, the GT 350 intake manifold and cold air intake. You get 20 extra horsepower over a regular GT. And so, I think the exhaust still sounds a little bit better than a regular GT because I've driven them back to back and it does sound different to my ears. Maybe I'm just biased or something, I don't know. But even if all you're getting is 20 extra horsepower, with the discounts you can get on a new Bullet that's left over on the lots right now, as long as you can live with dark green or black, you can go and put huge spoilers on it and stuff like any other Mustang if you want. I think it's a really good value for what you get for the money. It's a fully loaded Mustang GT basically with 20 extra horsepower. For $5,000 off sticker or whatever, they make a ton of sense. Some people are even getting like $8,000 off sticker. So you're getting a brand new car with 480 horsepower and every luxury feature you could want for $43,000. Like that's a really good value in my opinion. So I think it still is a solid vehicle, but that's just me. I love it, and everyone else doesn't have to. It's not a big deal, but I think it's good. We have, sorry, I have like so much phlegm tonight. Dom, thank you so much for another super chat. He says, top 5 vehicles you would like to see return. And he sent the email. Thank you so much for the email. I'll check that out whenever I'm done here. But top 5 vehicles I'd like to see return. Well, I guess the Gordon Murray's T50 basically brings back the McLaren F1, so that's one that would be cool to bring back. Otherwise, there'd be a lot of like JDM stuff I'd love to see come back. I'd love to see Subaru do a new SVX. I think that would be super cool, an all-wheel drive coupe with your really crazy styling, tons of power, something that's above the BRZ, that's more of a Grand Tour, something that would be really cool in my opinion. So that's one, SVX. Another one would be, I guess, Acura bringing back the Integra. I'd love to see a new Acura coupe, and there's rumors that there's going to be a new model different than the ILX. So that could be something, but I'd love to see a new Integra come back. I'd also love to see a new Prelude. I think doing something a little, now that they've gotten rid of the Accord coupe, I think doing something a little bit larger than a Civic coupe or a Civic Si or something, having a Prelude, I think would make a lot of sense. I'd love to see the CRX come back as a smaller thing that's, two doors, kind of like a front wheel drive version of a BRZ kind of thing from Honda. Would be really cool. Another Honda that I wouldn't want to see return, but I just wish we got over here was the Honda E that everyone else in the world gets. That seems like it's a really cool little electric car that I think would be a lot of fun to drive. But the fifth one, what else would I want to see brought back? There's so many just things I'm super nostalgic about from like the 90s and stuff that I would love to see come back. But it's mostly just the Subaru, the Hondas. Also, it'd be cool for Super to bring back the XT6, which is kind of the precursor to the SVX. But, that was a manual. I don't know how many people even know about the Subaru XT6, but that was a really kind of concept car, futuristic little coupe that had, pop-up headlights. It had digital gauges. It had a manual transmission with a turbocharged 4-cylinder, flat 4 engine. So basically like a coupe WRX with super futuristic styling, and it had all kinds of cool stuff too. I'm not sure if it had 4-wheel steering like the Prelude, but I think it had some other really cool features in it. And again, there's like so many cool things that they experimented with in the 90s and the 80s and even into the early 2000s for some of the companies that I just wish they were that bold these days. I get that everyone buys crossovers and stuff, but still, it just kind of makes me wish that some of that, fun stuff from the 90s. I mean, they weren't worried about failing. Mitsubishi is another example with the 3000 GT. I'd love to see them bring that back. Mitsubishi's running on fumes right now, just trying to stay alive, but like they did that. I mean, they were at the top of their game back then, but that an actual Eclipse from Mitsubishi would be awesome to see come back. I mean, I can go on all day. Basically anything that was cool in the 90s, I wish they still made today in a modern version. That's kind of what I'd love to see. Because I'm a huge fan of JDM stuff from the 90s. JS, thank you so much for the super chat. He says, used C7 versus used LC500. Which is better buy for weekend car, for street driving only? Does LC feel heavy cornering? Please share your experience with both. So I think, the C7 used is going to be a lot cheaper than a used LC500. So if money is an object here, I think the C7 is the easy choice. It's really a lot of fun. And I think the C7 is also going to be the better handler. It's going to be the more visceral experience. So, I mean, you're saying just street driving only, but I don't know if you're, doing spirited street driving. If you want to just have something as a cruiser, I would say the LC would be better for that. The LC, it does feel a little weighty in corners, especially more so than the C7 does. But the LC has a stability to it that the C7 never really had, in my opinion. Now, the Grand Sport C7s fixed that a little bit, but I think that I would have more confidence diving into a corner in the LC500 as far as it not stepping out on me or doing anything weird. But the C7 is such a good handling car that it is definitely hands down the better handling of those two cars. If you do get an LC, though, and you are worried about handling, I would highly recommend getting a 2018 because the 2019 LC500s, they softened up the suspension a lot to make it a better Grand Tourer. And so that's why you'll actually notice, whenever I was driving the convertible LC500 in my review, I was surprised by just how soft that suspension was, because the last LC that I drove was a 2018 that had that stiffer suspension. And so that was the disconnect there. So I think the 2018 is the sportiest LC you can get. So I would definitely get one of those. But as far as C7s go, I think, that would be the better weekend car. I think the LC 500 is something I would have as a daily driver and be totally happy with. But the C7 would be a really great weekend car, I think. And if you want to hear more thoughts, I do have full reviews on both of those. You can go watch the 2018 LC review that I did a couple years back. And I've done several C7 reviews. I did a regular one. I did a convertible. I did the Grand Sport. I did, of course, the Z06, the ZR1. I've done all of them. So definitely go check that out. All right. So, but thank you so much for the super chat. I'm just trying to get caught up with the other comments here as they're loading in. MR is asking, do you think the LCF will be revived? I don't think it will be. I don't know. I mean, I keep hearing stuff that goes back and forth though, because I did the LC 500 convertible review, and I was like, yeah, I really hope they do an F version of this. And then a bunch of people have been saying, oh, it's been canceled. And I thought I heard that it was canceled, but then I thought I've recently seen spy photos sometime this year of it still running around. And so I'm not sure why they would cancel it, because that would be a great test bed for the new twin turbo V8 that Lexus is working on. That's going to be in all their SUVs and stuff. I think the LCF is a natural place to debut that. So unless plans changed, I'm not sure, what's going on with the LCF, but I sure hope they make it. That'd be great. Poya is asking, are there any new cars coming? No new cars this year, unless I randomly, win a bunch of money or something. But no, right now the main focus is just buying a new house to have more garage space so that I can add more cars. Because right now we have one car garage, and so the Bullet gets the garage, and the wife's car sits outside, sadly, and I need to get that in the garage, and then buy more garage space so that I can actually add more cars on down the road. But nothing new coming in the near future. But yeah, I have a whole long list of cars I'd love to buy someday. It's just a matter of working hard, and hopefully the money comes in someday for that. But Jason, thank you so much for the super chat. He says, what's your take on pricing on the Mach 1? I think it will be higher than the Bullet. Also, can you sell me your Bullet? Yes, I'm keeping that Bullet forever, but you can get a really good deal on a used or a on the lot still new Bullet. They are going for, like I just mentioned a few minutes ago, like 42 grand. I've seen some of them go for, and used ones. There was one to bring a trailer, I think, that just went for like 38 grand or something. So they're really dropping quick with their depreciation. So they will slow down eventually, because Bullets usually hold their value a little bit better than a regular GT. But yeah, you'd be better off just buying a used one, because I wouldn't part with mine no matter what. But as far as the Mach 1 pricing, it's going to have the Tremec, and then it also has the same other enhancements as the Bullets. So I would say that I at least would add an extra $1,000 onto the Bullet's starting price, which for 2020 got bumped up by like $1,000. I mean, I don't know. And then you have, the better tire setup. You have the extra graphics and all that kind of stuff. I don't know. I could conceivably see the Mach 1 starting just above 50 grand if they really want to come in aggressive with the pricing. And then if you do the, track pack version or whatever, which has the wider tires and the sportier setup, I mean, that's probably going to be 55 grand or something. You got to keep in mind, if it is going to replace the GT350, that'll give them more freedom to just be like, oh, well, there's no GT350 to compete with anymore. So we can just make regular Mustangs, 55, 60 grand or whatever. And, it's not a big deal, because the next level up will be a GT500 for 75 grand. So I don't know how they're going to price that. And it sounds like, unfortunately, we're going to have another like 9 months or so to wait until the Mach 1 actually hits the dealers. But yeah, I'm glad they're doing it, though, because I think it's very cool. I know there's been a lot of people that have been wanting a Mach 1 to come back. And so I'm glad that Ford fulfilled their wish the same way Ford fulfilled my wish with the Bullet. So cool to see them both there. Daniel Sherrill, thank you so much for the super chat. He says, would the Super be a worthy upgrade from a 2016 Mustang GT if I bought one gently used in a couple of years? The lack of a manual doesn't bother me. Yeah, I think it would be a good improvement, because it's a little more vicious with its acceleration. Like Mustangs, even with a really good tire setup and even with the automatic, so there isn't any manual delay, it's a fast and very intense experience. And you have the wheel spin and a little bit more drama maybe with the Mustang, but the Supra just takes off like nobody's business. I mean, There's just tons of grip, but it's still dramatic in the way that it delivers it. And just that ZF8 speed, the way it snaps off those shifts and it's so tightly spaced together with the gears, it just, it's a different experience in a better way. I mean, like if I didn't have any loyalty to the Bullet, I would 100% be driving a Supra right now. Like no question about it. Like if someone was like, destroyed every single Bullet in existence and was like, now go buy a new car, I'd go buy a Supra because I love them that much. So I think it'd be a fantastic upgrade from a 2016 Mustang GT for sure. Now, as far as reliability, hopefully they will hold up better, than some BMWs do. We'll have to wait and see on that. But that motor does seem to be pretty solid. So I don't think you should have any worries. But I do think in the long run, the Mustang GT might be a little bit more reliable with its simpler electronics. But that's the only thing I can say against the Supra. Otherwise, it's a fantastic car. All right, other questions here. Someone says the live stream's still messing up for them. I apologize. I don't know, if it's my internet or YouTube or what's going on here, but it seems like we have a decent amount of people here watching and enjoying. So hopefully it's not too bad for the rest of you guys. Jersey Boy Greaser says, opinion on the new Corolla GR hatchback. It sounds promising from all the rumors. It's just going to come down to what they actually end up doing. Are they going to have all-wheel drive or not? Is it going to be the 3-cylinder turbo from the Yaris GR? I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see what they end up doing with that. And I was hoping we would see it relatively soon, but it sounds like we might have a while to wait since they just did the Apex version and that was it. Zachary's asking about my thoughts on the T50. I just mentioned that about maybe 10 or 15 minutes ago if you wanted to scrub back, but I'm super excited about it. I think it's amazing, and I'll be talking about it in the weekly update here this week as well. Yeah, that is ultimate dream car material there. All right, so someone says the stream's been fine, and my wife's been trying to figure it out too. And I think as far as the live stream goes, the app might be a little iffy, but Safari seems to work, or like normal web browsers seem to be okay. So maybe those of you watching on your phones, maybe there's some disconnect there, but it seems like it's working okay for people on browsers, I guess. I'm not sure. Chrome is working supposedly according to Bob, so I don't know. I'm sorry, guys. It's not an issue with the internet connection. The one time the mic had an issue, but haven't had any issues with the internet here. So Mustang Lab says, can you say here for the drinking game? Yes, I know I say here a lot. I used to say and a lot as well. Those are my verbal crutches that I use to fill in the gaps whenever I'm trying to, talk off the cuff quickly. Someone says if you reload the live stream, it works okay that way. So anyway, hopefully it works for enough people. All right. It's an Apple glitch, Jonah says. So he switched from his iPad to his laptop and it's been fine. So maybe that's it. It's all kinds of stuff. Hopefully it's not on my end. That makes me feel a little bit better. It's not me dropping the ball here, hopefully. It's just YouTube or something else out there. Matt's asking if I'm going to ever do another April Fool's car review. Yeah, that's something that I always have fun ideas. This year kind of, got killed off because of COVID, but I would like to do one next year. There was one or two really funny things that came up. I can't remember what they were for ideas, but there's always, goofy things I can review. And so, I got to do like a riding lawnmower or something someday. Like I did the tractor a couple of years back and stuff. Matthew Phelps says, is LW Automotive allowing you to drive their cars and review them yet? They are not. I haven't ever talked to them, though, so I haven't even tried. It's a local dealership that has a bunch of used sports cars and supercars. It's kind of insane. They park like Lamborghini Gallardos outside in the snow and like everything else. It really breaks my heart when I drive past there, especially this past winter, driving past there and seeing Ferraris covered in snow. It's just like, I don't know. They really need to get themselves a covered area to not leave all these things out in the elements. But yeah, it would be cool to kind of connect with them someday because they do have so many cars that you guys would love to see reviews of. Someone Yas is saying that YouTube has been hacked and major accounts are live streaming Bitcoin hacks. Yikes. Well, that's crazy. I guess maybe that's part of the issue. Who knows? Hopefully mine doesn't get hacked here, but I'm glad it's working fine for everybody. Rainey says, do you think Subaru will ever produce that futuristic looking STI? Well, they will do a new STI. Will it look as good as the concept? Absolutely not. It sounds like Subaru. I guess there was a rumor that like they have been hearing all the criticisms about how their concept cars look amazing, but their production cars don't look amazing, and they're saying they're going to try and change that. I'm not holding my breath though, because the new STI concept looked amazing. I would basically expect, if it's based on the Impreza still, take the current gen Impreza, put the normal direct stuff on it, and that's probably what you're going to get, but we'll have to see. But yeah, I wouldn't have high hopes for it looking much like the concept car, sadly, which is really a shame because whoever does their concept cars is a phenomenal designer. And then I don't know, I guess by the time it gets through the accounting department, the amount of cost cutting that happens to water it down is really heartbreaking. But yeah. JGAC300 says, can you review my 31-year-old Caprice? That would be a ton of fun, actually. If you're near the Pittsburgh area, please send me an email. And next year, whenever hopefully the world gets back to normal, I would love to review your Caprice. That would be really cool, actually. Joe says, great to be here, Matt. Do you think the new Sentra is the beginning of a new direction for Nissan? I sure hope so, because the new Sentra was really impressive. Honestly, I've been impressed with the Altima and with the Kicks. All three of those I thought were really solid. I think the new Rogue looks really promising. We'll have to see how it drives, but it looks really promising. I had a good amount of people that were really triggered by my Titan review and how I was calling it out for not being very nice inside. And again, that just goes back to me being unbiased. I just call it how I see it. And, in some ways, Nissan has some really impressive stuff. In other ways, they're still lagging behind. And I mean, that's just my opinion. But the way I see it, that's just, they're just still working out, some of the other stuff. But I think they are in a good direction for sure. And I hope that they continue on. There's rumors that the new Nissan Z is going to have an interior similar to the Sentra as far as how nice the materials are. That would be very promising and would really help the Z sell better with a better interior, I think, and stuff. So I think they're heading in a good direction. And, that little teaser, it looks like all their new cars coming are going to be very good looking as well. So that should help them out as well. The new Frontier is going to be really impressive, I'm sure. And so I have faith in Nissan, but it's just going to be a little bit of a bumpy road, I think, to regain people's trust, because so many people, the first thing you say Nissan, everyone says CVT, and it's like they're synonymous. It's like, oh, Nissan, terrible CVTs, like never touch a Nissan. So I think even if their products are amazing, it is going to be an uphill battle for them to just overcome the damage they've done in the past 10 years or so with the subpar products they've had in many areas. So that's the only thing hurting them, I think, that I see going forward, even if the brand is fantastic. Garrett, thank you so much for the super chat. He says, better to buy a slightly used 2018, 2019 car with 10 to 15,000 miles for $10,000 less, or go with a new car. Only infotainment has changed between 18 and 20. Yeah, I mean, it depends on, exactly what type of car you're talking about. But otherwise, yeah, I mean, generally, it's better to have someone else take the depreciation hit. My only holdup with buying used is if you're trying to reinforce the manufacturer's, will to build those types of vehicles. So, for example, manual transmission cars. If you are one of the save the manual people, don't go buy a used manual transmission car. That doesn't tell anyone anything except the guy or girl you're buying that car off of. Like, they're like, sweet, someone bought my old car. That's it. But, if you're wanting to, tell, Mazda, for example, like, keep building manual Miatas or keep building the Miata, then I think you should go buy a new Miata, because they don't sell many of those. And that sends a message, hey, we still have demand out there for new Miatas. Same thing like the Kia Stinger GT isn't selling great. Kia's thinking about killing it off. If you like the Stinger and you think it's phenomenal, yes, you can save yourself $5 or $10,000 buying a used one. And obviously it depends on your financial situation. If that extra $5,000 to $10,000 is really going to put you in a bind, clearly do what's best for you, buy the used one. But if you want to, encourage enthusiast vehicles, I would suggest going and buying a new version of that car so that they see, hey, look, people are still buying these new. It's not just like, I see so many comments all the time, people being like, oh, I can't wait till that's, cheap in 5 years for me to buy it. Like, yeah, you might be able to buy a used one in 5 years, but they might not make it 5 years from now because no one bought them new. You can't rely on everyone else to take the depreciation hit. At some point, there's going to be enough people that are like, nope, I'm not going to take the depreciation hit. And if everyone has that mentality, then no one will buy a new car. So, so that's kind of the only holdup there. I think if it's something that is on its last legs, I think, buying a new one is better. But otherwise, yeah, it makes sense, obviously, to buy a used car for sure. But yeah, thank you so much again for the super chat. All right. Old School 12 is saying, do you watch Rady's Rides? I really don't watch much YouTube because I just don't have much time. I'm so busy with doing my own channel. But I did meet Rady's Rides last year, actually. And I think it was a Honda event that I met him. And super nice guy. It was really great. He actually came up to me because he said he was a huge fan. He actually watched the channel, and it was one of the inspirations, I believe, for him. Maybe I'm misquoting him, but I think he really enjoyed the channel, and that was one of the things that made him want to do his own. And so it was awesome to meet him. He's a super nice guy. We're friends on Facebook. I just been seeing all his updates on there and stuff, and so yeah, he's really cool. Prince Hypno, thank you so much for the super chat. He says, you ever think about what would happen if GM and Lotus would have built an Elan together to fight the Miata? Could have been quad 4 powered, LOL random. Yeah, GM has these moments of brilliance throughout their history where there's like so many amazing things that GM does where it's almost like they had a crystal ball as far as what things should be like, and then somehow they drop that ball and they end up failing in another way and puts them back. Like, I mean, I don't know, I was watching one of the Motor Week retro reviews several months ago, and it was on one of the old Buicks or something, or Oldsmobile from like the early 90s that had a touchscreen infotainment system in like 1992, like a full like 15, 20 years before any other car had that. And that was like amazing. And like no one else picked up on that. No one else was like, maybe we should do that same thing. Like GM was the first. And it's like they actually, like someone saw into the future and was like, here's what's going to happen in 2012. Let's do it in 1992. And it was mind blowing. They had so many brilliant moments like that. And then it's just like they did it for 1 or 2 years. No one bought it because it was ahead of its time. And it went away, for 15 years or whatever. But so GM's brilliant in some areas. And I think doing Lotus partnerships was great. They did, I think, the Lotus motor right in the ZR1 Corvette back in the early 90s and stuff. But it would have been cool for them to do some kind of Miata fighter. But instead, I think the accountants went out and they were like, well, we can just keep building, all the other little convertible things they had back then, whatever, like Corsicas or, whatever they had back in the 90s. And that was it. Cavalier convertible, like, oh, that'll be good enough. No one cares about Miatas. And that's what they did. So, yeah, it would have been cool. But thank you so much for the super chat. As time goes on, I get more and more nostalgic about stuff from the 90s. So, yeah, someone else is confirming it's the app that's shutting them out. So if you can hop onto a browser for live streaming, that seems like that's better, I guess. GM messed up big time with the Blazer, Jonah says. The Blazer I thought it was a nice mid-size, SUV. It's, but yeah, you look at how the Bronco has like blown up and everyone, I think there was like Ford Authority or someone said that like 230,000 people have pre-ordered or at least reserved a Bronco. A bunch of those people will probably cancel it. It's just like a bragging right thing to say you reserved a Bronco, but the people who actually buy them should still be in the hundreds of thousands. And Chevy could have had that with the Blazer. They could have done some retro Blazer and had the same exact hype, and they decided to not do that. So yeah, that's another prime example, Jonah. Like you're very right of how GM they have moments of brilliance, and then they have times where they drop the ball. It's kind of unfortunate, but I'm always rooting for GM because I know that they have brilliant engineers and they have so much promise. And the C8 is a good example of that. The C8 is phenomenal. It's GM at the top of their game. And then you have the Blazer, which is, like I said, a good car, but, kind of one of those things where they probably dropped the ball in the decision making there. But it's just kind of crazy. All right. Noel, thank you so much for the super chat. He says, I thought GM messed up with the Blazer, but seeing eHummer, I understand why they took that direction. I think they'll come out ahead with electric Hummer. I agree. I think the electric Hummer is great, and that's going to, I guess, kind of be something, along the lines of a Bronco as far as off-road capability, maybe. The problem with the electric Hummer is it's going to be so expensive. I mean, yeah, they'll probably have a base version, but even that's going to probably be like top-of-the-line Bronco money. I think I heard the numbers floated around that if you're going for the top 1,000 horsepower electric Hummer, they're saying it could be like $100,000 truck, which, I mean, at that point, I mean, you're almost double the price of a nice Bronco or something like that. So, I still think, look at the Wrangler. There's a huge market there. Ford's tapped into it. GM could have tapped into it with the Blazer. I mean, they have other things. They could even just do I guess they can't do a K5 anymore since Kia took that, but they could do, any of the other, past historical names from Chevy, or just do something totally new and make some type of Jeep competitor. I think they still could do something like that that's, actually affordable for people. And the electric Hummer, I think the first couple of years, everyone's going to buy the fully loaded version, and it'll just be for the super rich people and the YouTube stars and stuff to, be like, hey, look at my really cool thing. It's not going to be really usable like the Bronco will be, I think, but I could be wrong. We'll have to wait and see. All right. Someone says they still have an issue on the desktop with the live stream, but other people say they're okay. I'm sorry it's not working out great this month, guys. Hopefully we can have better luck next month. But I'll continue on here for another hour or so and keep on going here. But it seems like at least some people are enjoying it still. But I apologize for those of you who are having issues with it. Dom, thank you so much for another super chat. He says, biggest vehicle pet peeve of all time, like cheap plastic and expensive vehicles, lack of storage space, overly relaxed bolstering in sports cars, etc. Man, you're having some really good questions for me. I got to think about all these. Biggest pet peeve. I think one of the biggest ones that's kind of an easy thing, but not having smartphone integration. Like everyone just wants smartphone integration. Any vehicle and there's very few these days that don't have it anymore. But for a couple of years there's some companies resisting, and it's like, why are you resisting? Like Apple and Android do their, I guess, user interfaces much better than any of the car companies ever have. Like, just give up, let them plug in their phones and be done with it. Like, just don't even bother fighting it anymore. Just let it happen. And so I think like that was the one thing, for a couple of years, I was really annoyed whenever a car didn't have smartphone integration. But now that's kind of a pretty standard thing in most vehicles these days. It's not quite as much of a sticking point anymore. Otherwise, pet peeve in a vehicle, I don't know. I think, just basically whenever stuff doesn't feel as nice as it should for the money, because to me, that's, that to me feels a little bit like a ripoff. And, I just feel like there's so many car companies that do such impressive stuff, especially on interiors, that it's like, well, why can't every other car company do that? And so that's something that sometimes is a little bit of a pet peeve for me. And the Nissan Titan was one of those where it was like a sore spot for me, where it's like, you did this refresh, you had all these opportunities, and you have like a nice big 9-inch infotainment system in it, but then you have these cheap chintzy plastics all over the interior, and you have block off plates on the air vents that look cheap. And there's just so many, and like that car or that truck, if you watch that interior review, the heated steering wheel button was in a truck. Trucks are very wide, and the heated steering wheel button was all the way over on the passenger side on the very edge of the center stack. And it's like, who made that decision? Like, there's actually multiple blank buttons, both on the driver's side of the steering column on the left there, and also there's a couple of buttons closer to the driver on the driver's side of that center stack. Like, there's a traction control off button, which is easier to reach than your heated steering wheel button. Like, they're the same shaped button. Like, why does this button not go here instead of here? Like I just, like, to me, there's stuff like that where I just don't understand. Like, Nissan, all their, I'm sure very intelligent interior designers, all the people that approve of every single little, direction and every single decision, of all the people that had to get through for this refresh for the Titan. And everyone was like, yes, please put the heated steering wheel button all the way over there and have the traction control button right here. That's a good choice. Like, stuff like that just kind of boggles my mind. So I guess since I'm ranting about that, that's probably my biggest pet peeve, is whenever button placement is terrible, whenever there's so many better choices and easy options for swaps. I guess that's probably my biggest pet peeve. Make things easy to use in cars. Don't make people have to dig for a button that they use all the time. Put it right out in the open. Bury all the other stuff that people never touch. That's something. Non-power windows, someone mentioned. Is that really a thing? Yeah, I think maybe one or two cars these days you can still get manual windows in, like maybe a Mitsubishi Mirage or something. I don't know. Blind spots, Prince Hypno's saying, yeah, blind spots are a little bit of a bummer, but these days with all the blind spot monitoring you get on most cars and stuff, that's pretty easy to work around. And if your mirrors are set up pretty well, it's not too bad. Jonah says, what is your worst pet peeve of other drivers on the road? I think just bad driving in general. I mean, it could be a whole wide variety of things. I think, though, the biggest one is texting while driving. I know that it's very tempting to do, and pulling out your phone whenever you're bored in a commute or something. I understand the temptation, but it really annoys me when I see people on their phones in the car, especially with COVID. I was so confused. Like the first few times I started driving after the lockdowns were going away, where it was like, hey, you're actually allowed to go drive places other than the grocery store or the hospital. I was like, oh man, like it's going to be great. Everyone's going to be actually paying attention and driving, because it's like, wow, we can actually get out on the road and drive again. But yet, even though everyone were literally locked down in their houses for weeks on end, staring at their phones 24/7 because there was nothing else to do. The first time they're out on the roads driving, and what are they doing? They're still staring at their phones. Like, you would think they would have had enough of their phones and they'd be like, oh, sweet, look, there's trees, there's like sky, I can like see the world again. But instead, they're still glued to their phones, even after being locked in and with their phone taped to their face for 2 months or whatever. It just blew my mind that so many people are still so addicted to their phones while they're driving, and it's so unsafe. And I get the appeal. I'm not saying that I've never texted while driving or anything like that. I'm not taking some moral high ground here. It just scares me, especially, no one wants to be in an accident. And I think, that's just one of the biggest causes of accidents these days, is people just not paying attention. And, especially with cars these days getting faster than they've ever been before. Your average Toyota Camry can, totally smoke any of the old classic muscle cars and stuff. Like, everyone has such a fast car at their disposal these days, and it can really get out of hand pretty quickly, I think. And so I think that's my biggest pet peeve. But going slow in the fast lane, Andrew Owen mentions, that is another huge pet peeve of mine. I hate when people are left lane hogs. That does drive me crazy. I also hate when people don't use turn signals. It was tough. I did a little road trip to DC, or past DC, to another part of Maryland 2 weekends ago, and I had to drive through DC on the way back and on the way down. And man, the amount of people on the Beltway and all the surrounding highways around Northern Virginia, no one uses their turn signals. Everyone's cutting everyone off. Like, everyone's driving like there's just no rules. And I guess the cops just like don't pull over very many people, because the amount of people that are just like slicing and dicing in traffic. I get in some cities you have to be really aggressive to get anywhere, but I mean, it was just like bad. Like, it does not kill you to use your turn signal. I don't know. It was just crazy. So anyway, I'm sorry for all the rants. It's kind of funny, but yeah. So I feel like being a good driver isn't hard. If you just care a little bit, it's not like it's a hard thing to do, but it's just so many people just do not care. And it's a little bit unfortunate. But again, no one's perfect, so I'm not pointing any fingers. Just those are my pet peeves for those who are asking. Someone says that sounds like Florida. Yeah, Florida's another. Don't get me started on the crazy Florida drivers and all the crazy stories in general you hear from Florida. I feel bad for any sane person that lives in Florida and has to deal with that on a regular basis. All right, so other questions here. A lot of BMWs, yes. Funny enough, you mentioned that when I was driving through Northern Virginia, a lot of the non-turn signal people were BMWs. That stereotype holds up. Some stereotypes are justified, because I mean, half the time I see someone without turn signals, it's a BMW driver or a luxury car driver in general. But generally, yeah, it seems like BMW drivers just aren't a fan of it. And I can totally see why people say that. Prince says, can we put higher sales tax on crossovers? Will that make people buy cars again? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, honestly, though, one thing that this is actually a really big problem in Europe, because they're really trying to crack down on emissions in Europe, much more aggressively than we are here in the States. And they're really struggling with that, because the country is trying to put the bind on the car companies to be like, quit making all these gas guzzling vehicles. And they're like, but that's all everyone buys. No one wants to buy the fuel efficient stuff. And so that's why they're trying to force people into electric cars in Europe, and no one wants to buy them. And admittedly, they're also very glitchy, since this is like first generation tech, but it's like no one wants to buy these vehicles over there. And so like the car companies are like, well, what are we going to do? Like, the government wants us to build these kind of cars. No one wants to buy those, though. And the stuff people do want to buy actually makes the emissions worse, because they're saying in Europe, especially, people switching from cars to SUVs is climbing at a very rapid rate, even much more so than here in the States. And so, they're kind of in that same conundrum where they're like, well, this is what people want to buy, and this is what people maybe should buy, at least according to the government. How do we reconcile these? And so I think that's why you have many car companies rushing to make electric SUVs. But the problem is just making them well. I've heard that the e-tron's pretty glitchy, and the Mercedes EQ C is kind of glitchy and stuff over there in Europe. So hopefully they make those better. But then they're also just so much more expensive. And so that's where the government, if they really want that to happen, is going to have way more electric incentives to bring those prices down, if that is really their goal. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how all that pans out. So yes, Yad is asking, do you get scared going in between two semi-trucks? I get scared sometimes on tight highways, 100%. Because semi-trucks, that is a losing scenario. If you end up tangoing with one of those, it does not end well for the person in the car. So yes, I try and get my passing done on past semis very quickly, especially if there's one on both sides of me. You better believe if I have the space, I am flooring it through that gap to get to the other side. I try and spend as little time around 18-wheelers when I'm driving as possible. And also not only for, it's not like there's bad semi drivers or anything. It's just that like there's people that cut off the semi trucks and you never know, how they're going to have to react and stuff. So I just always try and steer as clear from them as possible. And that goes for any large vehicle. If I see a huge Ford F-250 or something, I keep my distance from them too. Because I know if they hit me in my Mustang, they'll be fine. I don't know if I'll be fine, so I try and always steer clear of anything that's a hazardous like that when I'm on the road. All right. So, William says, stay away, tire blows. Yeah, tires blow out. Brianna does say semi-trucks are usually very cautious, though, which is true. Most of them are very good drivers, but there are still a lot that, there are still some accidents that happen. And so that's why it's a physics thing to me. It's just, it's not a matter of drivers or anything like that. It's just that if something does happen that's out of everyone's control, again, you're still just on the losing end of that equation. So that's always my fear there. But all right. Matthew Phelps says, do you guys like the feeling of when you drive next to a semi truck and the wind blows your car back and forth? Yeah, that is always a little disconcerting, especially if you're in a small car. Like I think there was one time, I can't remember what I was in, maybe a Miata or something. And being next to a semi and a Miata, that takes some guts to hang out next to a semi whenever you can literally like look up at their tire. It's kind of funny. Jonah says his pet peeve is those who can't master the simple concept of the zipper merge. I am from New Jersey and there is a lot of construction. No one can merge into one lane properly. Yeah, merging seems to be a very confusing thing for many people. And it's like, I don't get why. It's really strange. And a lot of people like have the actual merging etiquette. Like people, at least in the Pittsburgh area here, like people think that you're supposed to like clear the entire highway so they can merge. And it's like, there's a yield sign there for a reason. The person merging is supposed to yield. And so I'll try and, get over, to help people merge if I can. But if I'm like blocked in with someone else on my left, there's some times where a car will be like, oh, what are you doing? Why aren't you slamming on your brakes so I can merge in? It's like, because you have the yield sign. You're the one that's supposed to slow down, fall behind me, not the other way around. And so that is another little pet peeve with merging. And some people who just like don't want to accelerate quickly enough. And it's like, well, we're not all going to do 50 miles an hour waiting for you to speed up. Like, put your foot into it and, get going. It's just kind of funny. Other questions here, though. Ray says, hey, Matt, what did you and your wife study in college? I'm about to go to grad school in accounting, and I'm super nervous. Well, it's always, the unknown is, always kind of scary, but I'm sure, you're going to do fine in accounting, and best of luck in grad school. I went for financial planning, and I originally wanted to be a mechanical engineer and actually engineer cars. Then I realized I was too stupid to do that. And so I went back to finance where I'm decent at math, and I was able to master that. And so I got my 4-year degree from Virginia Tech there in financial planning. And my wife actually went to school for being a teacher. She wanted to be a teacher, and she did childhood education, early childhood education. So that's what she went to school for. And so, yeah, I hope it all goes well for you. But I'm sure you got this. Don't be nervous. And I mean, it's grad school. So you already got through college. You're already, doing better than a lot of people in that regard. And so I wish you the best of luck with grad school, but I'm sure you'll be totally fine. And congrats on making it that far as well. That's also a huge accomplishment. Jonah says, nice t-shirt, Matt. My dream car is a 57 Thunderbird. I would love to have a Thunderbird someday as well. That's one of the classic cars I'd love to own. And I'd be happy with any year, although I think I slightly prefer some parts of the 55, like the interior on it, like the dashboard on the 55, I like a little bit better than the 57, but I do like the fins better on the 57. So it's kind of a struggle between those two for my favorites, but they're such beautiful cars. All right. Vayanth is asking, hey, Matt, and I'm sorry I probably butchered your username. I apologize. He says, hey, Matt, how old are you? Any plans for kids? I'm 30 years old, and we're hoping to have kids in the future. But right now, it's just me and my wife, and we're just enjoying being kid-free for now. Big Bem is saying, thoughts on the Mustang Ecoboost? They are very fun. I had one, for 2 years, and it's a great car. It's a good platform if you want to do modifications as well, as long as you're okay with the reliability not being 100% perfect. But otherwise, I think they're really good value still, the EcoBoost Mustang, especially if you leave it stock. You shouldn't have any issues. And yeah, I really enjoyed mine. You can go watch my review on it. And I did a whole long playlist of my ownership, experience or about the 2 years or so that I had it. It was a really fun vehicle. And it was actually partially thanks to many subscribers here who helped with my little Fund Anything campaign way back then, that some people still give me grief for these days for a little bit of the down payment to help me to get that car so it was attainable. And I did all those videos on it to pay everyone back for their generosity back then. But Garrett, thank you so much for your super chat. He says, do you think FCA will use Alpha's Giorgio platform on the new Charger and Challenger? And what can Alpha do to improve sales and stay in the States? So I think with the Giorgio platform, I think the thing with that, what I remember hearing was that it is not able to handle the amount of power and the amount of torque that the Hellcat motors put out. I think I remember hearing that somewhere. And so that was why I don't think the Giorgio platform is going to be used for the next Charger and Challenger. I don't know what platform they're going to use, though. That is the big mystery, because I don't think they're just going to do the same old platform as before, especially since they want to do electrification this go around. So I'm not sure what they're going to do. As far as what Alpha can do to improve sales and stay in the States, well, that's another car. Someone was asking earlier about whether to buy new or used. That's another car that it's really tough because Giulias are so cheap right now. I mean, you can get a nice one for under $30,000 used and with low miles too. And that's really appealing, but that's another car that if you want to keep Alpha in the States, you got to buy a new one. That's just the only way to send the message to them that yes, people are willing to buy new Alfa Romeos, keep building them. But as far as how to improve the sales, I think what they could benefit from is a little bit more aggression. I think they didn't put themselves out there enough. They made the Giulia a very good car. And for enthusiasts that appreciate really good handling and stuff, and that is their number one priority, I think that the Giulia, is still actually, I think, the best handling sports sedan in its segment. It's just the fact that it has a slightly smaller trunk, the interior isn't quite as spacious, and so all those types of things, I think making it a little bit more livable would help. But I think they should make it more aggressive and kind of lean on Dodge's influence with the Alphas. So, for example, a couple ideas, like for the Giulia, I think one, they should have a more aggressive body kit on it. To make it a little bit bolder. I know they're beautiful and everything, but like how Dodge has wide body versions of the Scat Pack and the Hellcats. I don't see why they don't do a quadrifolio style, appearance package on the regular Giulia, or something like that, or even just make a really aggressive body kit for the regular version. Another thing is they should have an active exhaust on it, because that's something that I think some of the competitors do offer. And yes, it's only a 4-cylinder; it's not going to sound glorious, but they could tune it to sound really good. Especially the Italians know how to tune a good exhaust. So I think doing an active exhaust, make it really crazy and loud and boisterous. Throw that on the Alpha. That could give it some extra sizzle. And otherwise, I think, they're on the right track with the interior and everything. I think it's just amping up the aggression. There's no reason to do they should definitely do a higher horsepower version as well. Like, yes, you have the standard version and it is pretty impressive with the amount of power it has for that class of vehicle, but, do a new tune on it. Just crank it up another 30 horsepower, do a new tune, just add extra exciting stuff, because clearly they're appealing to the enthusiast. I don't think any normal accountant that's going out and leasing a BMW is going to be swayed into the Giulia. So you're going for enthusiasts anyway. Only enthusiasts know about Alpha anyway. play to that audience, make it crazy, make it aggressive, make it sportier than the rest. And I think that would really help drive up their sales a little bit more. How many of those enthusiasts are out there? I don't know, but I think that would at least give it a little bit more appeal, give them the edge, like, ooh, like this is the kind of what Jaguar is doing with, their cars, although it didn't help them much. But, like the marketing for the F-Type, the whole slogan for that car was, it's good to be bad. And that whole like, oh, this is like aggressive and stuff. Do that with the Alphas and make them really crazy. I think that would kind of help with their appeal, because trying to appeal to 3 Series buyers, I think, is a lost cause at this point. But that's my take on that. But, all right. So other questions here. I'm so glad to see so many of you still, talking here in the comments and stuff. It's great to see everyone interacting. So Julio says, hey, Matt, my name's Julio. How's life treating you overall? I'm getting by just like the rest of you, I'm sure, struggling with COVID. It's, made a lot of people struggle financially and as far as jobs. And, it just hasn't been a really fun year for most people. And that includes myself as well. There's been lots of hurdles and it's definitely, not been a fun year in that regard, but I'm still doing my dream job. I'm still able to pay the bills doing that. And so I'm very grateful for that. And so for me, I can't complain one bit. I just had an NSX to drive over the weekend. Like I've had lots of fun experiences this year already so far. So I cannot complain one bit. It's life's been treating me pretty good. Pistol Pete says, hey Matt, love the Friday updates. Thank you so much for continuing to watch them. I really appreciate your comments every week as well. Pete, thanks for your support. That's what keeps the channel going, is everyone tuning in. Joe says, a question, Matt, your 2-year update on your Bullet did really well. Would you consider more of those vlog style videos? Yeah, the views are really good on that. I was kind of pleasantly surprised that a lot of people were tuning into that. But it's a very fickle thing with the Bullet videos, because like that one did really well, and any kind of update I do on the car does really well. But those are also kind of rare, because since I don't drive at a ton, there's never really much to talk about if I want to do a meaningful update. Now I could just drive through the McDonald's drive-thru and be like, and just kind of do a bunch of filler content like a lot of vloggers do. But I want them to be meaningful updates, since that's kind of limiting to me. And the vlogs that I've done in the past where I'm just driving in the Bullet have always bombed. Like I did the road trip for the Indy 500 where I was cruising around with Chris Fix and Engineering Explained and Eric the Car Guy and Humble Mechanic. Epic road trip of all of us, driving down the road. Great. We even had a videographer filming some of the outside shots for us and stuff. Awesome vlog. I literally parked in front of the museum at the Indy 500 on the infield, driving that car to the Indy 500 and everything. It was an amazing trip. And I don't know, maybe like 8,000 people watched that video or something. Like nobody cared. And that's fine. It was a fun experience, but it's just like, I try and come up with like really epic vlogs and then no one cares. So it's just kind of demotivating to me to try and do more vlogs, because no one really cares about them, unfortunately. But the updates, everyone seems to really love. So I'll continue to do the updates. And I do want to do more vlogs. I always have new ideas, but they always just kind of disappoint whenever I do end up putting them out there. The Woodward Dream Cruise last year, I thought that was really cool. My first time on the Woodward Dream Cruise. And I passed 10,000 miles at that very moment on camera in the video. No one watched. So all that kind of stuff. It is what it is. It's YouTube. It's very unpredictable. There's some videos I pour my heart and soul into. No one cares. No one watches. And then there's other videos where I'm just like, I'll just do a walk around in my car. 50,000 views like that. And it's like, all right, well, I give up on trying to predict this stuff, but I'm grateful for whatever success I get, however it comes, even if it's very hard to predict. But Jason says he watched all those videos from Indy. Some people are dumb. No, it's just, I guess it's not appealing for a lot of people. It's all good, but thank you so much for being one of the 8,000 people who did watch it. I really appreciate it. My channel is just very fickle. I have over 400,000 subscribers, but I think most of those people are just like car buyers who subscribe to be like, okay, well, next time I need to buy a car, he's in my subscription feed and I'll watch like one video every 3 years. And, there's a few, small amount of people that really love like the Japanese car reviews that I do, the enthusiast sporty stuff. So I have that little pocket of people, but then they never watch anything else. And then I have, muscle car fans who only watch Dodge Challenger reviews, and then they ignore everything else. And, so there's all these different pockets of people who only want Bullet stuff, and then they ignore everything else. That's why, although I have, 412,000 subscribers or whatever it is, the views don't always pan out very well, just because it's very segmented. Some people only watch weekly updates. They don't care about car reviews. and stuff like that. So I'm just grateful for, like I said, I'm able to keep doing this, and I still love what I do. But I've kind of given up on trying to, have huge views like a lot of these vloggers do. But yeah, I always have new ideas, and maybe someday I'll be able to try out some of them and see if anything else can help me to gain some traction. But yeah, Garrett says, how can we help you get to 1 million subs? You deserve to be there. I appreciate it. I don't know, if I really deserve to be there. There's a lot of really good YouTubers. I mean, like the Straight Pipes just hit 1 million. They do such fantastic work. They deserve it and stuff. But honestly, it's just a matter of, anyone, who's into cars or who's looking to buy a car, just recommending the channel. That's kind of, I think word of mouth is super powerful. And I think that's kind of the best way to grow things. And that's kind of the way I'd like to grow, like someone mentioned, doing clickbait titles, and, have I been tempted to do clickbait titles to get more views? And I don't really have any desire to do that kind of stuff. It's just not me. It's just something I have a mental block against doing. So, and I think also, I think all of you who watch the channel, I know I've seen so many comments from you that say that you appreciate that I don't do clickbait and that I'm not, just doing BS updates without any real content in them and stuff. I think most of you respect that. That's one of the reasons, but I think a lot of you do watch the videos. And I'm so grateful for all of you who do watch the videos, even if it is just one every year or something. Every little bit helps, no matter, what it is. I get that everyone's really busy and no one has time to watch every video. Like I said, I hardly have any time to watch YouTube myself. So I have no complaints with that whatsoever. But yeah, I have no interest to do clickbait stuff, because I think all of you appreciate that I'm straightforward with my videos. I don't script anything. I'm off the cuff with my impressions on reviews. So I say a lot of ums and and heres, but it's all genuine. Every reaction is genuine. Every thought that pops into my brain that I say as I'm turning on the back road, like that's all genuine stuff. And I think that's the thing that a lot of vloggers, they aren't genuine. And there's a lot of, just, I guess, things that go on behind the scenes and stuff like that. And I think with my stuff, I try and be transparent with you guys. I try and just call it how I see it and do the best that I can. And hopefully, you guys do appreciate that. But yeah. So, I see Vathian, I keep butchering that. I'm sorry. He says, I've been watching you for years now, Matt. Don't get discouraged. Do what you love. You can never please everyone. I 100% agree. And that's why, this, like I said, this is my dream job. Like I said, I get to drive amazing cars. I have a blast doing it. This is what I've always wanted to do. And so the fact that anyone cares and anyone cares about my opinion and wants to watch the videos is, already just a huge, I guess, blessing on its own. So I'm very happy for all of you who support the channel. It means a lot. Daniel, thank you so much for the super chat. He says, I saw pictures of the NSX in your garage instead of your Mustang. Mind blown. Yeah, that is one of the few cars. I think there was that and maybe one or two others. I know the RAV4 Prime I had to kick out of the garage, or the RAV4 Prime got the garage because I had to kick the bullet out because I had to plug in the RAV4 Prime, and the only way I could plug it in was if I parked it in the garage. So that was I think the only other one. But yes, for the NSX, I definitely wanted to put that in the garage. It didn't deserve to get rained on. It didn't deserve to be sitting outside. And I mean, especially considering that NSX cost almost as much as my house. I didn't want to leave it sitting outside. If I lived in some, millionaire neighborhood or something, maybe I would leave it out. But, in my area, I just figured it'd be better off in the garage for that reason too. Devin says, how old are you, Matt? I'm 30 years old. Rye says, I like your videos, how your videos are always professional, no cursing, obnoxious pop-in pictures, memes, etc. I appreciate that. Yeah, that's another thing that I try and, make the channel very family friendly, because I have had a lot of parents of kids who have messaged me or come up to me in the past and said, thank you so much for, just being someone they don't have to worry about their kid watching videos of. There's so many crazy things on YouTube these days that, parents are worried about their kids watching stuff. And, and even just, I just think, I kind of like, I like being an inspiration to, kids, and being able to be a source of information for kids to be able to watch and, enjoy without having any kind of, weird political stuff or any kind of, swearing or anything like that in them. Because I really don't think it's necessary either. And so that's, why I kind of just, avoid that. And it's been paying off as well because YouTube's been cracking down on swearing and stuff. So even a lot of people who used to swear are now like, beeping it out. So I kind of future-proofed myself there as well with, kind of always staying clean from the get-go. Jason says Matt's McLaren reviews are low on views, but they're so fun to watch. Yes, that's another confusing thing with YouTube is, some of the crazy supercars. I get they're not very relatable, but no one watched the McLaren reviews, even though they're hilarious, fun, and probably hilarious to watch with my reactions, like you mentioned. But yeah, there's a lot of fun cars I've had the good fortune of reviewing, and I'm really thankful for that. Devin says, dang, you're older than me. I didn't think you were. Yeah, I know a lot of people thought I was really young, and especially in my older videos, I probably look a little bit younger because I did, start doing this at this point almost 8 years ago. So it's been a while, but yeah, I'm now 30. It's crazy. I've crossed over to the 30s. Vishal says, I originally subscribed just to watch the weekly updates, but I've grown to enjoy your reviews as well. Keep up the great work, Matt. Well, thanks. I'm glad you gave one of the reviews a try, and I'm glad you enjoy them. I try and, put out reviews that appeal to everybody. That's why I cover everything. I used to just do sporty stuff, but I know there's so many people that want advice on their family crossover and stuff. So I started doing that stuff to try and, have something for everybody and a video that everyone can enjoy. And so hopefully you guys enjoy that. The DeLorean video was the most fun to watch. Thank you for watching the DeLorean video. Don't want to keep harping on this, but that's another one no one watched, even though I, was super excited about that video. That actually goes down, a lot of people ask me what my favorite car to review ever was, and that's probably in the top 5 of cars that I've loved to review. Like, yes, the McLaren 720S is probably my favorite from an acceleration standpoint, but the DeLorean from Back to the Future, it wasn't the one in the movie, but it's like an identical copy. That was super cool to drive. That was a bucket list thing to actually drive a time machine DeLorean. That was definitely one of the ones I'll never forget. That was super awesome. William says, thank you so much for the super chat, William. He says, thank you for pointing me to the Mazda 3. Things have changed so much since I bought my car in 2003. I'm very happy with everything except that it's not cloth. I really appreciate your thoughtful response. Yeah, no, I'm so glad that you found the Mazda 3 and was able to work out for you. They're really great cars. It's amazing how much Mazda has improved the interiors on those to make them feel nicer than a lot of the luxury cars these days. It's really, really impressive, and I'm glad you ended up in one and you enjoy it. That's why I do this. At the end of the day, yes, it's fun for me, but I get the most fulfillment because, yes, driving an NSX for a few days is really cool, and I'll remember that the rest of my life. But getting to help so many of you to find a car that you love and a car that's going to bring a smile to your face every morning when you hop in and go to work or whatever, like, that is what keeps me doing this. I think if everyone had a car that they actually enjoyed driving every day, something that gave them a little bit of a smile on the way to work and on the way home, I think the whole world would be a little bit happier in just that little way. It's not a big way to change the world or anything, but I think it makes the world a little bit of a happier place if everyone has a car they can enjoy. And that's, no matter what your price range is, there's something fun at $2,000 or something fun at $5,000. There's something fun at $500,000. And so no matter what your price range is, I really think even if you have to have a minivan because you need all the space or something, you can always still buy a $500 beater to go drive around whenever you want to have fun and stuff. There's always options. And I really hope that, someday everyone can have a fun car to, they enjoy every day. So Joe Taylor says, Matt, you're considering getting rid of the weekly updates back at the end of last year. Are you still considering it? Thanks for answering. I am going to keep with them because what I've seen with the weekly updates, when I originally thought about, quitting them at the end of last year, there was a very strong response from so many of you that were like, this is my Friday afternoon thing. This is my Friday evening thing. Like, I watch it when I get home from work. It's like, woohoo, it's the weekend. Let's watch the weekly update. People really look forward to it. And so even though it's a lot of work, it's something that makes me feel really good that people really get excited and look forward to it. And it makes it's something for them to look forward to. That makes me want to keep doing them. And so, the views, never really go anywhere. It's always the same amount of views every week, which is okay. I'd love for them to grow, but it seems like, they might not, but they're worth doing, I think for every one of you who enjoys them. And so that's one of the reasons why I keep doing them. So I'm going to keep doing them, I think, for the foreseeable future. And thanks for supporting them way back then. All right. So other questions here. Devin says he's 28. So yeah, I think a lot of the people who watch this channel are very close. I think it's like a 25 to 35 age range is the largest demographic. And then I think, yeah, 18 to 24 is the next largest. And then like 35 to 45 or something like that. But it seems like everyone's kind of around the same age. Edison says Savage Geese is the gold standard for car reviews. Savage Geese is amazing. His reviews are so good. He does such a good job. I love his sense of humor as well. He is one of the few people that like almost every single post I can crack up. Him and Jack. I love following both of them on Instagram. Just the hashtags they use when they post their pictures is hilarious. And I'm really glad that over the past year or two here, I got to meet both of them, and I was actually able to have several dinners with them just on these press events that I've been on. I've been able to actually, talk with them for several hours. And I mean, they're the type of guys you can talk to them all night long. I mean, we had multiple beers just hanging out, talking on these press events. They are so cool. And they are a top-notch channel. They deserve all the success that they have as well. And so yes, 777 material says, Matt, do you remember that tasteless parody Savage Geese did of you? Did you find that offensive? I did find it offensive at the time. I was pretty annoyed. But there was also several parodies of me way back when. There was multiple channels that were doing parody reaction things, and there was a lot of those back then, and so I kind of grew a thick skin and got over it. But yeah, I did. Whenever I first met Savage Geese, I didn't know what to expect because I was like, okay, does this guy like hate my guts because he made all these like videos making fun of me in the past or whatever. And then I kind of it was actually I met him on the Super launch last April or whatever that was, and I was like, I don't know how this is going to go. And, I was able to, kind of talk to him a little bit, get to know him a little bit there. And it turns out he was really nice and didn't have anything against me. It was just kind of, he just has a very funny sense of humor. And so I don't hold that against him or anything. It's all good. I did a lot of dumb things, several years ago too. So, it's all good. So like I said, I'm very grateful that I know them now, and they're awesome dudes. Prince says, to be honest, if you're being parodied, then you're doing pretty good, that people know you. Yeah, that was kind of how I was trying to spin it as well, that it's flattery to have someone do parody of you. So there's no such thing as bad publicity, as Edison says. So yeah, 100% agree. And so it was all good. And Rec TC says the weekly updates are part of his routine now. He sits down with some sushi at the end of this week and watches them. If I can't, I don't eat sushi until I get a chance to watch. That's so nice of you. I appreciate that. That's awesome. Man, it's been way too long since I've had sushi. I need to get some of that soon. But thanks so much for watching the weekly update. I really appreciate it. So Jason says there's something about the collaboration of YouTube car guys that just makes you feel good. Yeah, it's always fun. I love, and I wish I did more collabs with people on camera, because there's so many times where I go on these press events and it's like everyone's there. It's like Sophion from Redline Reviews. You have Yuri and Jacob from the Straight Pipes, and you have Savage Geese. There's all of us in a big circle just talking cars, or, we're all at dinner and we're all kind of mingling and talking back and forth and stuff. And it's so awesome. And I feel like those conversations on their own would be, really fun to record, just kind of, getting a behind the scenes look at all that. But, that's the great thing about the car community that's really different from a lot of other communities on YouTube and elsewhere, is there's very little drama among car YouTubers. Like, yeah, there's some, with other people that I really don't, talk much with or whatever. But, for the most part, everyone is so supportive. It's such a kind community. Everyone's complimenting everybody. Everyone's just always supportive. And it's always like, hey, like, does YouTube do this weird thing for you? Like, yeah, what about you? Yeah. Like, it's, it's all that type of stuff. It's such a nice community, and that's really rare to find these days. And, so I'm very grateful to be part of it. And it's I do really miss those press drives that I used to do, before COVID shut everything down, because that was a really good, obviously it's fun to, go to some fancy hotel and be wined and dined and, drive some brand new car. But really the social aspect of hanging out with all the other YouTubers and stuff is really what made those trips worth it. Because it was just so much fun. But, all right, other questions here. We have Julio says, what are your thoughts on the 2021 Lexus IS? It seems like a nice update. It's just a little underwhelming. I wish they did more with it. And I did explain a little bit more in the weekly update that I did. If you want to search, I don't remember which one that was though, because I don't think that was the headline story. But I did cover in a weekly update. But I think it's a nice improvement. I honestly, though, excuse me, I'm more excited about the new Acura TLX. That looks like it's totally next generation version, new platform, really an impressive package. And I think between the two, that's the one I'm more excited about. Jonah says he agrees the car community has the least drama. It's so refreshing comparing communities, like YouTube always hypes. Yeah, there's lots of drama on YouTube, and I mean that makes for views. That's how these clickbait, vloggers get their views, is all the drama. But I'm glad that all of us have kind of steered clear of that for the most part in the car world. And you have some clickbait, vloggers in the car world, but they kind of stay in their lane, we stay in ours. And there's no reason to be calling people out or criticizing people. I'm of the opinion, live and let live. If people like doing that, it's up to them, but it's just not for me. But it's all good if that's what they want to do. So Vishal says, Matt, have you reviewed the current Subaru Forester? My aunt and uncle bought one recently, as they're having a baby soon. It would be nice to hear your thoughts on it. Yeah, I have not driven the current gen Forester. I did the previous gen, the XT version, and was really impressed with that. I would like to review one, and I have actually asked Subaru for one. And they haven't had anyone in the press fleet, I guess. I think they did their new Forester rollout, a year or two ago, and they, I guess, don't have one in the press fleet currently. I'm hoping they do add one someday, because I would like to review one, even though it might not be super exciting. I think that is a very popular vehicle, and so I want to cover it for those who do, want to hear my opinion on it. But seems like it's, I did do a quick drive video on the Forester. So I did do the new gen quick drive, but it was very brief and it was in the rain and stuff, so it wasn't great. But if you do search, I think it's 2019 Subaru Forester is when they revealed that one. A quick drive video, I did have that, so you can check that out. But otherwise, I haven't done a full review yet. So Jason says, Top Gear YouTube, Matt Geese, tech segment with Engineering Explained and the shop segment with Fix. Yeah, that would be a perfect combo. It would be awesome if they did a Top Gear YouTube. That would be very cool. Yeah, there's been so many cool ideas for TV shows in the past, and I don't know if any of you even watched the Pull Apart Challenge. I did that a couple of years ago. It was kind of like a pilot mini series that we were hoping would get picked up by Discovery or something like that, and it was so much fun. You can go watch them if you've never seen them. But it was me, Chris Fix, Engineering Explained, Eric the Car Guy, Humble Mechanic, Classic G-Body Garage, Brian. I'm blanking on his channel. I don't know why. But Brian Buckner, I can't remember his channel name. But anyway, there's a bunch of us, and we all did, and there's also Bleep and Jeep, I think, was in that as well. And a bunch of us, all did this Pull Apart Challenge. It was really, really cool. It was so much fun to film. I think it really kind of, they tried to do a little bit of drama in it just to try and play up the emotional aspect of what we were doing. But we were such good buddies that, there wasn't any drama there. And so maybe that's why, it didn't get picked up as a show. But it was still a really cool idea. And it would have been really cool if someone would have gone and made that show. But Joe's saying, do you get reached by manufacturers to upload a video for a new model before an embargo? I do, yeah. A decent amount of them recently actually have been before the embargo, like the Lexus LC500. So that review just went live, the end of July. I had that vehicle in the middle of June. So I sat on that review for about 5 or 6 weeks until the embargo dropped. So that one they put out ahead of time for me. And there's been a couple others in the past that I had to wait for an embargo. And a lot of the press drives, a lot of those did have an embargo as well. It's just kind of a general thing with the press drive is, they have like a week where they bring journalists in waves of, this wave for day 1 to 2, this one for day 2 to 3. And, so they'll have an embargo like the following week so that all of us put our stuff out at the same time and no one has an unfair advantage and stuff. So they do that, where I've had to hold off until an embargo. But that's about it, but yeah, and then there's some times where, I come and get stuff like after the embargo, like this, actually tomorrow I'll have the Kia K5. And that's something that the embargo dropped, a couple of weeks ago or whatever. And people have been posting stuff. And so I'm a little bit late to that one, but that's something that's, a very fresh vehicle that Kia is rushing out to me as soon as they can here. And so I'm excited to review that here this weekend. But yeah, so all right. Brian's Mobile One. Thank you, Jonah. I don't know why I was blanking on his name. Brian's Mobile One is Brian from the Pull Apart Challenge that was in it. And Jason said it was extremely fun to watch, so I'm glad you enjoyed it, Jason. That's it's really cool that some of you really enjoyed it. Garrett says, what is it like going to a press launch, and which one was your favorite? My favorite one, I don't know. One of my more, I guess, favorite ones in recent memory. There's been two actually, two that were really well done. Okay, three. They all pop into my head very quickly. So C8 Corvette, which was I did that one in February, and it's crazy. Like that was like peak press car, peak press events. Like that was like really the prime. And like I look back and I'm like, man, that was like right before everything just like went to just complete crap. And so that was a really fun one because the C8 launch, they had it in Vegas, which is always, kind of an easy flight for me to just fly right into Vegas. And then, there's a lot of really good back roads outside of Vegas in the mountains that we were able to drive the cars on. And my driving partner for the C8 review was Shmi 150, which, I mean, I've run into him a couple of times, a super friendly, nice guy. And so it was really nice of him. He requested to have me as his driving partner on this because there was a few people he recognized, but a lot of it is just other print media and stuff. So I think, he wanted someone who could, who knew how to do YouTube stuff and would be able to, I guess, understand that he needs to pull over to film stuff and all that kind of stuff. But it was so awesome to be able to spend the day with Shmi, be in this super hyped up car that everyone's been excited about. And then we got to take it on the racetrack. And not was it just any racetrack, but it was Spring Mountain Raceway outside of Vegas there. And that was the track that I actually did the Cadillac V Performance Driving Academy with, that I did another video on several years ago. And so I really knew that track well because that's where I really learned how to drive fast on a track. And so being on a track I knew really well in a very exciting car with such awesome people. I also, was able to hang out with Eddie X there. And a few others. And so that was really awesome. And so that was such a fun press trip. I also loved doing the GT500 launch. That was set up really well too, because the GT500 media event, that was also in Vegas coincidentally. But they had, a nice backroads drive through the mountains and stuff. And then they also had the entire Vegas Speedway rented out for us. So there was the circuit track where we could take the track pack GT500s around the track. And then they had the drag strip reserved for us. So you could just literally just do burnouts and launch on the drag strip all day in a brand new car that no one else has driven yet. It was just a lot of fun. Another one of those like moments where it's like, I'm really fortunate to be able to do what I'm doing here. This is so much fun. So that was a fun one. Also, the new Supra launch was another one I was really excited about and a ton of fun too. Being able to just not only, be able to drive the new Supra. I had Engineering Explained as my driving partner, who's a really good friend of mine, actually. And so that was great. It's always great when you have because they always pair you up on these press drives. You have someone with you to kind of maximize the amount of cars, the amount of people you can get in the cars. So you always have a driving partner. And there's sometimes where I go on a press drive and there isn't anyone else that I know on it. And so it's, a little bit awkward. And I'm being like, hey, I need to drive really slow because I need to turn onto this back road and do an acceleration. Like, people are like, what? Like, that's weird. Like, and then I get all giggly and they're like, oh, this dude's kind of weird. And so there's that whole kind of thing. And so, there's sometimes where it's just really nice to have someone, who understands YouTube and stuff, being in the passenger seat there. So that was great having him there, being able to drive the brand new Supra with one of your good friends. And then we were able to take it around the track, which was amazing fun. And then also it's just really cool to be with Tada-san, who was the chief engineer on it, who was the chief engineer on the BRZ as well. And just being able to meet him, meet the guy who made one of my favorite cars that literally started this channel in a way and jump started it, I guess. And, being able to eat at a dinner where he's giving the toast, is just kind of mind blowing. I was this little, 21-year-old kid buying a BRZ. And now here I am 8 years later, sitting at a dinner table while that engineer is giving the toast. And I'm with all these awesome people taking these cars around a track. It's just, again, I'm just very fortunate, and it's all thanks to you guys for watching and stuff. And so I really appreciate these opportunities. It's been a ton of fun. Jonah says, what do you think of Doug DeMuro's new car bidding website? Would you buy a car from there? I actually haven't had much time to look into it, so I'm not sure. I've seen it's kind of like a bring a trailer type thing, but yeah, I Haven't really looked into it much, but I'm sure there's some reason, I guess, why he's doing that instead of like something like Bring a Trailer. But that whole segment is really heating up with online car sales. So I'm sure he's a very smart guy, so I'm sure he's going to do great with it. And Vishal says, of all the fast cars you reviewed, which one still remains the most memorable today? GT350 is up there. The Jag F-Type R is one of the top ones as well. The GTR is the first time I drove a GTR, is also still kind of burned into my brain. Let me think what else. I mean, all the stuff I did, like I said, recently has been amazing with the GT500. All the McLarens I've done have been very memorable reviews, all that kind of stuff. All the really big, expensive, crazy stuff, for the most part, is the stuff that I've really, just been really, really happy to review and been a lot of fun. All right. Devin says I'm moving up. Yeah, little by little, I'm trying. It's I'm thankful for the move ups that I've made so far. But hopefully, it gets a better position someday where I can, have multiple cars and, project cars and all that kind of stuff to give you guys more entertaining content than just reviews. But in the meantime, I'm loving doing the reviews for sure. Samuel says, how do you rank the BRZ in terms of best handling cars you ever reviewed? As far as rankings go, I mean, I would say that it's, it's one of the, I guess best handling also has a few caveats, because there's like best handling as far as grip goes. Like a GT500 has really good handling now with the new track pack and all the grip that it has. So it's a very good handling car, but is it an enjoyable experience the same way the BRZ is? It's a very different experience. And I think it just comes down to if you enjoy light, good handling vehicles or really grippy, good handling vehicles. And that's kind of, the thing that's come up even whenever I just did the weekly update on the BRZ ending production here for the current generation this past week. So many people were like, well, yeah, no one buys BRZs because you can get a Camaro or a Mustang that's way faster for the same money. And like, yes, that's true. And they also are very good handling cars now that, probably will post faster lap times around a circuit and stuff as well. But they don't feel the same way a BRZ feels. The same thing goes for the Cayman or the Boxster or the Miata. There's good handling, and then there's good handling in a simple way. You can over-engineer a GTR to handle really well because it's got tons of grip and tons of computers and all kinds of techno stuff going on to make it handle good. And then there's just good, simple suspension and lightweight handling vehicles, and the BRZ is in that category. And so I think it's one of the friendliest and purest driving experiences, I guess, if that makes sense. And that's one of the reasons why I still love the BRZ. And honestly, I do really miss that car a lot. I really regret selling that. If I could go back and do it all over again, the reason why I got rid of the BRZ is because at the time I couldn't afford it because of the way my life was changing. And so, I just wish that instead of buying the Mini, I wish I would have skipped the Mini altogether and just refinanced the BRZ. That probably would have got my payment down to a more affordable realm where I could have afforded it again, and would have kept just doing stuff like that. And even if I had to sell a few parts off of it to, help out my financial situation, I still wish I would have just kept the BRZ, because I look back on that car never let me down. That car was always reliable. It always had so much fun in that thing. And I do really miss it. And I wish I would have held on to that one. It would have been a fun car to just keep and do a project car out of or something. But yeah. So yeah. All right. Let me see. Other questions here. We have Prince saying, I've daily driven an NB Miata for years. Driving a slow, fun car fast is way better than a fast car slow. That's very true. And that's something that a lot of people, I think, kind of miss out on. These days, everyone's focused on 0 to 60 times, and there's nothing wrong with that. Acceleration is fun and it's a rush. I'm the first one to admit that, clearly, with all my acceleration reactions. But there is so much to be said for, and that's the fun thing with the BRZ. The BRZ, I could take that thing to red line every single day. I was merging onto the highway and, rip through the gears, and it was just a blast. And the Bullet is fun, with its 480 horsepower. But it's also, it's a good thing the Bullet is fun to drive slow, even though it is so fast, because you have this crazy crackles and pops from the exhaust and stuff at low RPMs. But I do miss, being able to just drive the BRZ so hard and not have to be terrified about doing 100 miles an hour. And So that's the thing with the Bullet, it's so good in those upper RPMs, but by the time you get to those upper RPMs, in the Bullet, even second gear, I think I can hit 75 in second gear or something like that. I don't know. It's just like very tall gearing. And I know my buddy Engineering explained it a whole video about how, tall gearing is just a fun killer in cars. And I do wish that there was shorter gearing in so many cars. I think the Bullet is okay, but it wouldn't hurt if it had some shorter gearing. But yeah. So, yeah, I totally agree though. The Miatas are really underrated. So many people overlook them when they could have so much fun in them. All right. Jason says, man, the nostalgia tonight is real. I know, I appreciate it. It's been fun going down memory lane on some of this stuff. All right, so fast car on a fast track, scary, according to William. Yeah, I agree. And I've had my fair share of, very fast driving on a track. And actually one of the craziest things, I rode in a Viper ACR on a track back in college, actually around VIR. And man, that was so fast that I actually almost got car sick in that thing. It was so impressive. But behind the, with the, in the hands of a very skilled driver, it's also very impressive to have the speed, but it's also fun to just go slow and, be driving like you're going fast, even though if you're not, going too fast, you still have a huge smile on your face. Brad says, I got a Brz ETS and I love it. I do wonder how close to a Porsche it is handling, so I'm impressed by it. Yeah, and so I think, actually Subaru did benchmark the Cayman whenever they were developing the BRZ in the 86. Like they had Caymans alongside, like being like, how does this compare? And they really set it up to be very similar. And I think when people ask me, what is the car that handles the most like a BRZ, I say a Cayman. They really do handle pretty similarly, which is amazing considering obviously the Cayman's mid-engine, but they have a very similar fluidity to the steering and just a simplicity to the handling and stuff that it's really kind of cool. Obviously, the BRZ is more tail happy than a Cayman, but as far as when you're in corners and you have grip, I think they feel pretty similar in a lot of ways. The driving position is the same, very low position and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, and then you also don't have to worry about as many speeding tickets, which is always a good thing. So yeah, Zaki Chan Financial says thoughts on the 2021 Mazda 3 2.5T. We're coming full circle here now as we reach the 2-hour mark. I did mention that at the beginning, but I'll be talking about that in my weekly update some more. But I think that it's cool. I just wish they had it in a manual, and I wish it wasn't so expensive. If you just saw pricing just came out, I think yesterday or today, it's going to be over $30,000 starting, and a fully loaded one's going to be almost 40. And that is a tough pill to swallow because almost 40 grand. I mean, you're talking about Civic Type R money, Golf R money, WRX STI money. Yes, the Mazda has a nicer interior than those, but most of them are either front wheel drive. I think with the Golf R and the STI, you get the all wheel drive, so you have that to compare. But they all have better transmissions than the Mazda, and they're going to be sportier than the Mazda. I just, I don't know. I hope it does well for them, but I'm a little iffy about that pricing, to be honest, about the Mazda 3 Turbo. So Leapers Keeper says, which car did you go into expecting to dislike but surprised you? I don't know. Let me try and think here. I think, like in the most recent few years, some of the cars that haven't been excited about driving have been a lot of the hybrid vehicles that I've then been like, oh, this is actually kind of cool. And maybe it's just me getting older or something. I don't know. But even like, so this past week I had a Ford Escape hybrid. And then I also right now actually have a Honda CR-V hybrid for a week. And I know, not exciting cars or anything, but it's kind of fun to hypermile. And in the Ford, it actually has a counter of how many electric miles you've driven and how many gas miles you've driven. And I know for many of you who, love, crazy gas engines and stuff, I understand that's not very exciting. But to me, it's kind of cool to be like, how much can I do on electricity before the gas engine has to kick on? It's just kind of a fun game to play. And even if you watch some of the old Top Gears, James May kind of highlighted that many times in the past where he's like, oh, let's see how much we can hypermile this and how far we can go. And it's just kind of a fun little game to play of, being like, can I feather the gas enough to like keep it in electric mode before the gas engine comes on and stuff like that. So maybe that's dumb, but that's the one thing, in the past few years I've been like, oh, hybrid. And now I'm like, oh, cool, it's a hybrid. Like this will be kind of fun to play with. And it's a different type of fun, of course, but to me, it's still something that's a little bit entertaining at legal speeds, without driving like a maniac and stuff. But Yes, that's maybe the one thing, if I think of any other car in particular that I was expecting to dislike. But honestly, I think most cars these days are so good, and I go into every review with a very open mind. So I always try not to have any kind of preconceived notions to taint my view on a car. So I try and just see like, well, we'll see how this does. And maybe I've heard stuff about it or I've read stuff about it, and that might, make me a little bit curious or doubtful. But, most of these engineers and most of these cars are set up pretty well. And for their intended demographic, they all do a pretty good job, I think, for most of the time. Matt says, what's the craziest acceleration you've ever encountered? Craziest acceleration. Well, as far as a passenger, I still think probably the twin turbo Gallardo that I rode in many, many years ago before I even started doing reviews. That's probably the craziest acceleration still. The craziest one with me being behind the wheel. It's probably a tie between the McLaren 720S and the Tesla P100D Model S. Those two both were like mind blowing. So probably the Tesla was even a little bit crazier just because it was so like unnatural with how fast it was. I think that's kind of what was so disorienting about it and kind of crazy. Garrett says maybe the Nissan Kicks as a car you expected to dislike. Yeah, that's a really good example. Yeah, that's one that I didn't hear many great things about it. And then I got in it and I'm like, oh, this little thing is really fun to whip around in. If I needed something affordable, and I didn't need all-wheel drive, a Nissan Kicks I think would be a fun little thing to kind of just drive around in. And it doesn't, have a great setup, but it actually, the way they tuned it to be a really fun, slow car to drive fast. And it kind of had some of that fun to it. So yes, we're coming up on, it's now been 2 hours, even though we had that little bit of a break with the connection issues and stuff. I see the views are a little bit lower on this, live stream. So maybe some of you are still having issues and bailed. So no worries there. Hopefully next month, the live stream's a little bit better with the connection and whatnot, but hopefully you guys enjoyed this here. Maybe I'll go for a couple more minutes here and then we can end it. All right, we have Samuel saying, what do you think is a car that's underrated? Well, the NSX that I just had, which you'll be seeing a review on next week, that is, I think, such an underrated car. I don't know why more people don't buy them over, the dozens and dozens of Lambos that, people are constantly flipping through and all the, just, I don't know, all that stuff. I think like even a Porsche 911 doesn't have nearly as much appeal to me as, an NSX does. I think it's a really good value. I think it's a ton of fun. And I think it's just one of those cars that just is ahead of its time because, you look at, and I talk about this in the review a little bit too, but you look at like, what's Ferrari working on? Ferrari's working on a mid-engine twin turbo V6 hybrid supercar that I think might be all-wheel drive with an electric motor in the front, but if nothing else, it's a hybrid twin turbo V6. Acura's been doing it for 3 or 4 years now. Ferrari's now just doing it. What is everyone else working on? Maserati's doing a twin turbo V6 supercar with the MC20 that has a hybrid component. You have the Corvette, which isn't going to do a V6, but it's going to do a twin turbo V8, which will one day have electric motors in the front with a hybrid and have, that in the ZR1 or the Zora or whatever they end up calling it. And guess what? Acura's been doing it for the past 3 or 4 years. And so I think, it was just very ahead of its time and probably ahead of its time too much for its own good. No one's excited about that yet. Everyone wants to cling to the V10s, and I totally understand that. I love the sound of those Audi and Lamborghini V10s and the screaming Ferrari V8s and all that kind of stuff. And, I would love to have one of those as well. But I think if you want to feel what the future is like, drive an NSX. This is what everything else is going to be like in the 2020s. And Acura just did it 5 years before everybody else did, which is kind of cool. It just goes to show how brilliant the team is at Acura and at Honda. They're very, very impressive with their stuff. And someone says those are too expensive, though. They are expensive cars, but when you compare it to the competition, it's actually much cheaper. So, you can get one for around 150 grand if you don't want a bunch of options on it. And, or maybe it's like 160, but even at that price, your 911 Turbo is going to be around that price, but a Turbo S is more expensive. An Audi R8 V10 is way more expensive. Like they're like 180, 190 for a base model. If you go on Auto Trader or something, they're all going to be over 200 grand brand new. McLaren 720 or McLaren 570S is well into the 200s. Lamborghinis, of course, well into the 200s. Ferrari in the 200. So, I mean, you're spending 50 grand less, which I know to the rich people that afford these probably isn't a big deal, but it is a good value. And I think that, yes, it's not as exotic and everyone sees an Acura badge and they're saying, well, I don't want to pay 150 grand for an Acura. And I understand that, but I think, the performance is right up there. It actually is a faster 0 to 60 time than the McLaren 570S, than the Audi R8 V10. And only the 911 Turbo beats it, I think. And that's just because Porsche just like wizards with their PDK. And I don't know how they do such insane launches, but, if it wasn't for a PDK, it'd be faster than the Porsches as well. But yeah, so I think it's a very strong vehicle. That's why I think it's so underrated. I mean, no one cares about them. And I don't get it personally. I think they're super cool, and you never see one around you. So I mean, in my area, it's not rare for me to see an Audi R8. I see one, once every couple of weeks maybe. I see a McLaren 570S once every couple of weeks. Not special. When's the last time I saw an NSX? I don't know, probably 2 or 3 years ago. They're much more rare, and so I think that also adds some appeal too. But that's just my opinion on it. I know lots of people see it differently. But Kyle, thank you so much for the super chat. He says, when do you think auto shows will be back and running like normal? That's a good question. I think it's going to depend on how quickly, things get back to normal in the world. I'm hoping, it sounds like what everyone's saying, there might be a vaccine sometime early next year. That'll certainly help, I think, get things back to normal. I know they said the Geneva Motor Show is already canceled for next year, but I think there was some logistical reasons as far as, I don't know, some leasing issues or something with the building, or I don't know what the issue was, but so Geneva's not happening already next year. I don't know about the LA Auto Show yet, but I'm pretty sure that'll be canceled. I don't know if you guys saw, they just canceled SEMA, by the way, which I was kind of expecting, but they've now made it official. And so that's gone this year. So I don't know. I mean, I would say, maybe next spring, New York Auto Show, if things are really improving finally, that could potentially be, maybe the first one you'd see. If you want to play it safe, though, I think, maybe wait till the Detroit Auto Show, which will now be June of next year. Maybe that'll give it a little bit more time. I'm hoping by the middle of next year, things will be back to normal, but I could be wrong. Brad says, cough, cough, Supra. I don't know if that's for the underappreciated car, but that's another one that I think kind of gets a lot of grief for no reason. I mean, I understand everyone's holdups on the Supra too, but I'm just glad it exists with more and more sports cars getting killed off and stuff. All right. And Rye says, not anytime soon, unfortunately. I work for a hotel company, and business/group travel has been directly hit. Yeah, I mean, I know for me, all the press trips and stuff, they've been canceled. And a couple of the companies have asked me, like, when would you feel comfortable even traveling again? And, I don't think I'd be comfortable, doing a lot of extensive traveling. Because, I mean, back whenever things were normal, I would be flying back and forth to California, sometimes 3-4 times a month or something. So, I mean, doing that much travel, I don't think I'd want to do that until, things are mostly back to normal and, most people are vaccinated, all that kind of stuff. And everything's been kind of handled as far as figuring out how to contain the virus and, the right drugs to combat it and all that kind of stuff. So I think it's going to be a little bit of a while. Jack says, will there ever be a project car? My issues with project cars have always been that I don't have the time, the space, or the money to do it. And those are still my 3 holdups. I am so jam-packed with stuff with this channel, just filming reviews. It's like bonkers how busy it is. Just to give a little glimpse, tomorrow I will have the most press cars I've ever had. I'm going to have 4 press cars at the same time. I have a Ford F-250. I'm going to have 2 Kia K5s. The GT line and the EX to compare. And then I also have a Honda CR-V hybrid right now. So just trying to film all those and then trying to edit all those videos and then trying to also do the weekly update. This is definitely a much busier thing because it takes me, 8 to 12 hours to edit a car review. So basically each video you watch is an entire day's work just editing it. And then it's also, an afternoon's work filming the review. And so trying to do, multiple vehicles and stuff. Plus, rolling shots as well. My wife texted me to point out, doing rolling shots is another thing. Doing those shots also means I gotta, have my sister come over and, coordinate all that kind of stuff. When we're coordinating schedules to film that, there's a lot of work that goes into the channel. So unfortunately, that keeps me super busy. And then just trying to, on top of that, do a project car would be really tough right now. And like I said earlier, I don't have an extra garage space. I don't have any driveway space. I can barely even fit all these press cars in the driveway, let alone, doing a project car. So it's a very good problem to have. I am not complaining, but I'm just like, unfortunately, way too busy, and don't have the space, for the project car. And it's also an investment. If you want to do a really cool project car, it's a big money investment. And for something that, I don't know if you guys would enjoy a project car, on a large enough scale for the car to actually justify, for the views to justify, the amount of money I'd have to spend on all the project car stuff is another unknown. But if I had the time and the space, I'd probably give it a try just to see, even with something cheap. And so, I'm starting to lose my voice. But yeah, so that's kind of my holdup. But I do want to do a project car. I know for a while I've been kind of resisting it, but I think it'd be really cool just because I have some really fun ideas I want to try out. I have multiple fun ideas. One that's a little bit on the cheaper side that I think would be a really cool build, and then one that's more expensive. It's kind of more of a dream build if money ever allowed someday. So we'll have to see if I can ever do that kind of stuff. I also have a couple other vlog ideas that I'm kind of keeping to myself for now, but I have a few cool things that I know are passions of mine that I think would also be stuff that you guys would enjoy watching as well. But it's just having the time to even experiment with new video styles and new different types of things is also something that's kind of tough. But I'm going to keep working to try and better manage my time and trying to, be able to do more so that I can try and do some new stuff to switch it up a little bit so that it isn't too stale with just doing reviews all the time. I want to try and do some other stuff, down the road. But William says, "Okay, Matt, you're the best." I appreciate the super chat. I'm far from the best, but I try my hardest. That's for sure. Matt says LS swap. Yeah, that would be a fun thing to do in multiple cars. But I even have some other swap ideas that I think would be pretty sweet. We'll see if I can ever get them to happen someday. Jason says, Matt, bring back Vintage Car Fan. That's another thing I'd love to do if I had time. For those of you who might have seen that back in the day, it still is my top featured channel on the on my featured channels list on this channel. That is a channel where I did walkarounds of vintage cars and kind of gave a little bit of the history of them, because classic cars are a huge passion of mine. But that's another thing I'd love to do. That's a whole separate thing. But I'd also like to do those as well someday. That would be kind of cool to get back to. All right, we're at 2 hours now. I'm going to answer one last question here from Samuel. He says, do you think the manuals are dying for real now? Honda is known as one of the few manufacturers left that continuously make it, just killed it on their Civic and Accord lineups, except sport models. Well, even now, the Accord doesn't have it at all. Even the sport models is gone. And then the Civic, it's now, it's still around, but it's only in the sporty stuff. And I think the base Civics and stuff, you can still get the manual too. But it is just tough. They said there's more people buying electric cars than manuals now. So it's just really, really rare. And I don't know, though. I'm kind of optimistic because I think that, I'm hoping with COVID, there's some people who are just finally going driving for the fun of it that maybe never thought that driving could be fun before because it was just something to get them from point A to point B. But now that they're like, hey, I want to just get out of the house and I want to just go for a drive just to go somewhere and do something, even though everything else is shut down and closed. I'm hoping that kind of encourages some people to fall in love with driving again. And I hope that with that discovery, maybe some of them will fall in love with driving a manual transmission again, or discover it for the first time. I think there's so many companies that are doing such a good job of making it super easy to get into. Like Toyota is one of the best examples with their intelligent manual transmission in the new Corolla. That it basically prevents you from stalling. It'll like rev the engine a little bit to really help you out so that, it's very easy to not stall the new Corolla. It also has the auto rev match downshift so that it can really smooth out your shifts. And it really makes it great for a beginner. That's one of the easiest manuals to learn on, I think, in the new Corolla. Even though it does have a bit of rev hang, they've done a really good job with making it accessible. And I'm hoping that, there's some people who really stick to that. And I know up in the more expensive stuff, you have like the Porsche fans who are still really adamant about the manual. There's some BMW people that are really into the manual still and stuff. And that's why like the new M3, they're still keeping the manual around, even though they were probably going to get rid of it. There was such demand that they're keeping it around for the new generation. So I really do see some positive signs there for manuals. It's definitely going to be a more niche thing. It'll probably continue to get more and more rare. And unfortunately, it might even get to the point where it's reserved for more expensive cars someday. but I think that there will still be some that keep it around. And I know there's a lot that say they really want to keep it around no matter what. Even Aston Martin, who doesn't really have many manuals, all they have is the Vantage, but they say they want to keep them around as long as possible. Porsche also said they want to keep manuals around as long as people keep buying them. And so, I think that there is some positive signs there, and there's a lot of companies that are committed to it. And so I do think that they'll stick around for a while. I think it's not going to die off very quickly. It will probably die off eventually, but even it's been cool because there's been even some companies that are slowly, like not manufacturers, but smaller companies that are even starting to pair up manual transmissions with electric cars. And you even see like the Porsche Taycan has a 2-speed transmission. It's an automatic, but the fact that they're putting geared transmissions in electric vehicles means there could be some potential there as well. And I think even the electric Mustang, actual Mustang coupe that they had at SEMA last year, that had a manual transmission, and it has multiple. It's a normal like 6-speed manual with the electric engines. And yes, it'll be slower than a Tesla, but for people who have a manual, and then enjoy that experience, I think you'll even be able to do that with electric cars. And so I think, yeah, it's not going to be for everyone. Most people probably would rather not have that. But for those who do, I'm hoping that there's at least some aftermarket stuff out there to convert to manual, even for electric cars way off into the future. But yeah, so I wouldn't give up hope yet in manuals for sure. But yeah, so that's my thoughts on that. But yeah, thank you all so much for joining the live stream here. I'm going to hop off before my voice goes out anymore. But thank you all so much again for joining. I really, really do appreciate it. All of you who tune in every single week for whatever it is that you like watching on the channel. I really do appreciate the support. It means so much to me. And yeah, you guys are awesome. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you all have a great rest of your week and a great weekend here, and continue to stay safe and healthy as well in these crazy times we're living in. But anyway, thank you guys once again. I'll see you on the next one. Take care.